Good evening. Tonight, we're honored to hear from County Executive Barry Glassman, who will deliver his 7th annual State of the County address in a pre-recorded message. But before that, before the county executive speaks, we have a brief video highlighting the Glassman administration's past year in office. Council, and now at this time, it's truly my pleasure to introduce County Executive Glassman.
Mr. Council President, members of the County Council, my fellow citizens, this is County Executive Barry Glassman coming to you in a virtual format with my 2021 State of the County address. It's hard to believe that this time last year, reports were beginning to surface from China about a new coronavirus deemed COVID-19. As we all know, it was not long until March brought the pandemic to Maryland. Since then, I have had an old Swedish proverb taped to my computer screen. It says, "In calm waters, every ship has a good captain. In rough waters are the true test of leadership." I am fortunate to lead a dedicated county workforce. Through 61 state executive orders, we never closed for a single day, and Harford County frontline workers kept delivering essential services to our citizens and businesses. As the early shutdowns occurred, I was just finishing up this year's budget. I am proud that despite some reductions in capital spending and long-range projects, we still funded education, completed the second phase of salary improvements for our law enforcement and correctional officers, funded increases for my county employees, and kept the county moving forward. Over the last 6 years, I have navigated the county to a position of fiscal strength. Quite frankly, that is allowing us to sail these stormy seas brought on by the pandemic. We have returned our fund balance to $25 million. So far, cuts haven't been necessary, nor has the county had to dip into its reserves. Our income tax revenue has held up. In fact, we closed the last fiscal year with about 2% growth, and this fiscal year, 2021, is on track to make budget. Our property tax revenue, which has been growing at 2% over the past few years, is also on target. Our transfer tax and recordation tax revenues are very strong, reflecting our diverse economic base and a hot housing market, confirming that Harford County is a desirable place to live. As we stand today, the state of Harford County is strong. Looking ahead, we will have to keep a close eye on state cuts and cost shifts as the legislative session gears up in a couple of weeks. It also remains to be seen what type of future funding or additional rounds will come from Congress, but I am confident that local governments, such as ours, are among the best ways to get that money into the communities we serve. In fact, the CARES Act has been a great assistance to our community for COVID-related expenses and economic development. In mid-May, the county received approximately $45 million from the federal government through the state. Now, first, the state didn't want to release this funding directly to most of the counties, but with dogged determination, I and my colleagues across Maryland insisted that local governments were the best way at meeting local needs. I am pleased to report and thankful to my staff that we were able to put all of that $45 million back into our local community for our personal protective supplies, small business and restaurant grants, plus grants to the Board of Education and other allied partners. As for the upcoming budget, I wish we had greater certainty. The truth is, our fiscal outlook has never been this difficult to gauge. Our economy is still subject to supply and demand forces, but we also face unpredictable currents. They include the spread of the virus, the speed of a vaccine, the timing and size of federal aid, and the decisions made in large part by the state that determine which businesses may open and to what extent and which businesses are closed and how long. In the past, it was possible to sense a prevailing wind in the economy that would last a year or two. Now it is difficult to see trends from quarter to quarter. Changes come week to week and sometimes even day to day. What I can say is we have built a solid ship with a resilient local economy, and my conservative budgeting has restored strong reserves without tax increases, as we have made record-level investments in education, public safety, and local businesses. I do not plan on changing course, turning back, or lowering our sails. Despite some headwinds, I will continue advancing our goals, and as we have announced, we'll be moving forward in my next budget with funding for a body camera program for law enforcement and plans for the new Aberdeen Community Center, which we had to scale back this year due to the crisis. Beyond the pandemic, 2020 was a year of continued accomplishments and milestones. My administration was honored with 2 awards for innovation from the National Association of Counties. In partnership with the sheriff, we were recognized for our anti-drug pledge program for children in elementary school, and our wheelchair costume workshop was honored for giving kids of all abilities the chance to dress up for Halloween. We continue to enhance emergency services as the county's EMS paramedics handle close to 3,000 calls, and we continue to increase investments in our volunteer fire EMS system. I also gave our frontline EMS and fire companies $2 million in CARES Act funding and waived their pension points for this year. I am excited that our Next Gen program will help pay off student loans for fire and EMS volunteers, with 39 applicants so far this year. We achieved milestone in preservation by partnering with the state and Harford Land Trust to purchase Bellevue Farm in Havre de Grace. The 347-acre farm will give us close to 1,300 acres of preserved parkland along the Chesapeake Bay shoreline. The county's agricultural preservation program was updated in April, and we preserved 1,509 acres of valuable farmland. I am proud to say that close to 25% of Harford County land is under local, state, and federal preservation easements. Our next step will be to begin studying our tree canopy to quantify the county's forested lands. I am pleased that the Bay Conservancy will be a partner in the endeavor. We won a major victory on the legal front when the Supreme Court ended a 30-year case involving a proposed rubble fill in historic Gravel Hill next to the St. James AME Church. The court upheld the reversal of a $45 million judgment, one I would note that many said I should just have settled or paid. Thanks to the many counties around Maryland that supported us in protecting the environment, local zoning authority, and those citizens alive and past who stood up for environmental justice for their community. We expanded our digital platforms, which have proven crucial during the year and helped us remain operational. For example, through our e-permit center, citizens and builders of residential homes can now take their projects from application to inspection to U&O all online. Regarding the internet, we recently made progress in addressing the lack of service in some regions of the county with a public-private partnership to expand the infrastructure for broadband. Carrying out one of my efficiency goals, the county saved an estimated $1.1 million in healthcare costs, thanks to the plan changes that offer better benefits without raising costs for county employees. More recently, HR Director Jim Richardson led the way to another $1.3 million in savings with enhanced benefits and other premiums for our retirees, and he's about to become one of them. After 22 years in county government, JR stayed with us an extra month just to see this program through. JR, we hope you'll enjoy a well-earned retirement. I am proud that Deputy Director Tiffany Stevens will move into the director position, and Nicole Barnwell will also be moving up, becoming the first African American to serve as Deputy Director of Harford's Human Resources. Through this unsettled year, I have tried my best to balance protecting us all and keeping our local economy open to the extent the state would permit. I am so proud of our citizens and so grateful to our healthcare professionals, first responders, county employees, and our everyday families who have balanced a pandemic, teleworking, and virtual learning and embraced Harford's tradition of giving back to our neighbors in need. I pray for the families who have lost loved ones and send blessings for their healing. In each of my preceding State of the County speeches, I enjoyed sharing my study of President Lincoln and his historic leadership. This year, I thought to share an inspiration that begins on one of his darkest days. Lincoln and the First Lady worshiped their 11-year-old son, Willie. In 1862, as typhoid fever made its way around Washington, D.C., it had stricken Willie, and he died in the White House guest room in what is still known as the Lincoln bed. The President and First Lady were never the same. In fact, Mary never entered the guest room again. Lincoln's pastor spoke of that pandemic which had taken their dear Willie, as this pandemic has taken over 130 Harford Countyans and over 300,000 Americans as I speak. Lincoln bowed his head as the pastor said, "Heaven but tries our virtues by affliction, and often the cloud which wraps our present hour serves but to brighten all of our future days. I too can see brighter days ahead, with calmer waters. Keep the faith, be safe, and take care of one another. Thanks, and God bless."
Thank you, County Executive Glassman. And thank you all for joining us for tonight's legislative address. It goes without saying that 2020 presented us all with many new challenges, challenges felt across all aspects of life, affecting everyone. This council and how we conducted the business of Harford County was not exempt from any of these hard times we faced. As Council Vice President, I'm proud of how the council members conducted themselves, continuing to serve their districts as well as Harford County as a whole. Likewise, I'm equally proud of the service and leadership our Council President Patrick Mancini showed. Under Council President Mancini's leadership, this council operated effectively and efficiently during these unusual and trying times. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Council President Patrick Mancini to deliver his third legislative address. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Woods, for the introduction and for your service to Harford County. Good evening, County Executive Glassman, council members, directors, county employees, and fellow Harford Countyans. It's an honor and pleasure to speak with you this evening. As Council President, I'm extremely proud of each member of this council for their dedication and commitment to the office. Despite the challenging times the COVID-19 pandemic has presented, council members continue to work on behalf of our citizens every day. Harford County remains a positive model across the state for the way in which we work together with our citizens and business partners to be in compliance with County Executive Glassman and Governor Hogan's executive orders. This pandemic has brought about a unique set of challenges, particularly to the workforce. And I would like to take this time to thank all of our county employees for their hard work and continued dedication to serving the citizens of Harford County. County government and the County Council were able to stay open, operational throughout the ongoing pandemic, in large part due to the efforts of our employees. We continue to work with the Health Department, the administration, Upper Chesapeake Health System, and all of our testing partners to provide more capacity for testing. Along with our increased testing efforts, we are pleased to learn that the Health Department has received its first round of vaccines, and they're being administered to our first responders and fire and EMS personnel. Vaccination of our frontline workers, doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers will be administered by our partners at Upper Chesapeake Health System. Walgreens and CVS pharmacies, through federal contracts, are responsible for vaccinating our long-term residents in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Implementing these vaccines are an important step in combating COVID-19 to help ensure your overall health and well-being. Recognizing that COVID has affected all parts of our lives, and none more so than our children's, we all agree our children are our greatest asset and they represent our future. Unfortunately, their ability to learn and grow in their education has been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. They continue to struggle with the challenges of virtual learning and social isolation, which is why we will continue to work alongside our state elected representatives, the superintendent and health department, to assist in getting our students back into the classroom as soon as possible and in a safe and secure manner. Even before this current pandemic, we've experienced a lack of connectivity throughout areas of Harford County. COVID has placed a bright spotlight on this issue, bringing about a renewed focus on expanding our opportunities to work with the administration and third-party providers. Councilman Schroeds represents the council in this administration's Rural Broadband Committee. He has been a strong advocate for connectivity in the Northern District and throughout the county for many years. We commend him on his efforts in this area. Council members stand ready to assist with any and all efforts needed for our children, businesses, and citizens. Serving as the chair of the Board of Health, I've maintained a close working relationship with our health officer, Dr. Russell Moy, who has recently retired. We congratulate and thank him for his many years of service to our county. My colleagues and I welcome his successor, Dr. David Bashai, and look forward to continuing a close working relationship with him and the health department. During her time as acting health officer, Ms. Austin experienced many significant challenges, and we commend her for the outstanding job she and her dedicated team continue to do as we move through these unprecedented times. Ms. Austin has been instrumental in making sure our citizens remain safe and healthy while navigating through the governor's executive orders. This was critical to allow our businesses to remain open and operate safely. Working in conjunction with the administration and health department, council members continue to keep businesses educated on restrictions and guidance while also sharing information on grants and financial support opportunities. I commend my colleagues, especially Councilman Jan Giordano, for all of his efforts to promote available funding sources to business in his district and throughout Harford County. It is imperative for each of us to remain strong advocates for our business community. The final U.S. Census counts are expected to be released soon, which are crucial to federal funding for local jurisdictions to aid in infrastructure and road improvements, education, our seniors, and public health efforts. Your council is charged with forming a redistricting commission to examine county legislative districts based on population throughout the county. This process will occur over the next several months, beginning with the commission selection by mid-February. While this will be one of the council's priorities this year, we will maintain our efforts to advocate and legislate for our citizens and businesses impacted by the pandemic. This also includes continued focus on budget approval, public safety, education, health, economic development, preservation, and the Route 40 corridor. In closing, my council colleagues and I thank our citizens for placing their trust and confidence in us to represent them. We truly appreciate and recognize the importance of our dedicated team at the council office, and we thank you for all you do. I want to offer my special thanks to my legislative aides, Ms. Harris, Ms. Lentz, and Ms. Sapp, and to my budget advisor, Mr. Ondish, for their service and commitment to me, my office, this council, and the county. But none of what I do is possible without my wife Jeannie's support at home and in our business. Without this, I could not serve in any capacity. So Jeannie, thank you for all your love and continued devotion. Harford County truly is a great place to live, learn, work, and raise a family. We have nothing but optimism for a better, brighter, safer 2021. Thank you, and God bless this great county.
Thank you, Council President. Council, at this time, we're going to take about a 4-minute break until the legislative session starts. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Chair calls to order legislative session day 21-002. Council, we continue to meet with an unmodified agenda due to the ongoing health emergency. I would ask you to please join us at this time to stand for the pledge, followed by opening prayer led by Councilman Johnson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we would, let's take a moment of silence for the Capitol police officer that lost his life last Wednesday. Thank you. We thank you, Lord, for another day. We ask you to heal our nation as we go through a tumultuous time in our nation's history. Please calm our language, change our hearts and minds, and let us remember that we're stronger together than divided. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Council, before we just proceed, I would like to ask for general consent to follow the request of the administration and move to agenda item 7B to introduce and vote on Resolution 001-21, refunding bond resolution due to the timing constraints. I believe Mr. Sandless is with us, and he'll give us more detail regarding the urgency and timing. Good evening, Mr. Sandless.
Yes, good evening. Yes, and thank you for this special accommodation. The reason behind this is we are more or less trying to match the.
Mr. Sandless, if you could hold up just a second, please.
I'm sorry.
Agenda item number 7B. Mr. Woods, please read in Resolution 001-21.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolution 001-21, refunding bond resolution, introduced by Council President Mancini at the request of the County Executive. A resolution of the County Council of Harford County, Maryland, the county, adopted pursuant to Bill number 20-015, passed by the County Council on October 13th, 2020, approved by the County Executive of the county on October 22nd, 2020, and effective on December 21st, 2020. Bill number 20-015, pursuant to Section 12-201 through 12-213 of the Economic Development Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, and Subtitle 5 of Title 21 of the Local Government Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, to specify, prescribe, determine, provide for, and approve certain details, forms, documents, and procedures, and other matters necessary and desirable in connection with the authorization, issuance, sale, security, delivery, and payment, or for the refunding bonds, as defined in Bill number 20-015, approving the forms of certain documents to be executed by the county with respect to the refunding bonds, make certain legislative findings with respect thereto, and provide that this resolution be effective on the date of its adoption by the County Council. No public hearing is required for this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Again, I'd like to welcome Mr. Sandless and Mr. Walters. Mr. Sandless?
Yes, thank you. I was just so eager to bring this this good news to the county. I could barely wait.
My mistake.
No, that's on me. As you were alluding, yes, we did request a special timing and a modification of your agenda, and the reason for that largely is that the investment community, we're more or less trying to sync up with their calendars, and they want approval of this bond sale kind of as soon as possible, because what's happening is in this particular sale, normally when we do a sale, we hold it during the middle of the day. We have a special session. We have a competitive sale, and it is all just one, generally one entity that buys the bonds, and then we approve it. This was a little bit different. This was a negotiated sale that we did using the services of an underwriter, Piper Sandler, and then they were more or less working with numerous investors, actually 16 different investors purchasing these bonds. And so because of all of this, the timing and the desire to make this all official, we've asked for this this change here. So what we have is a bond sale of a refunding in the amount of $11,365,000. And what we're doing with that, this is in regards to the Beech Tree TIF, which was approved about 10 years ago. Currently, we have about $13,745,000 of outstanding bonds on that. So we are, in essence, reducing our overall debt level, if you will, paying off $13.8 million with $11.3 million. And that difference there is largely the premium. And so that premium, once you factor in that premium, along with lower interest rates that we're getting, we expect to see some substantial savings here. So on a gross level, just straight up dollars over the next 20 years, and I should note that these bonds were 30-year bonds. They're now 10 years old, so 20 years remaining. We expect to save $11.25 million. And then on a net present value basis, that's $8 million. So some substantial savings here. And then the true interest cost, kind of when you factor in that premium and these lower coupon rates, if you will, that's 2.43. So again, it's a really strong rate. Very happy with that. In comparison, where we were before is we had a 7.5% interest rate on this. So again, some substantial savings here that the county can realize. So just kind of a quick reminder about kind of how the TIFs work is that TIF stands for tax increment financing. And what you're doing is you are pledging property tax revenues that are above like the base value, whatever it is, the value that you had kind of before the development occurred. You're pledging those property tax revenues to pay off the debt service. And so there was about $170,000 of existing property tax the county continued to keep, but all the any taxes kind of above and beyond that, we're going to service this. This debt service. So a couple of things have happened in the past couple of years. You know, one, as the beech tree development has come into its own, more and more houses were developed. Revenues increased, but by doing this debt service savings, we will be able to more or less free up some of those additional revenues to return back to the county. So ultimately, the county, the general fund, the highways fund, will be the beneficiaries of these savings here. Another beneficiary of them as well is because now these are much lower rates. Is there's a provision in this bond sale in the TIF district that if the property taxes were not sufficient enough, that there would be a special tax levied on those properties. This more or less makes it with this much lower interest rate and these much lower debt service payments very, very unlikely that there will need to be a special tax. That there will need to be a special tax in the future. So again, some really strong savings here. And with that, I will Fabian Walters from Miles and Stockbridge, who's the county's normal bond counsel, was also working with the team here, as were Davenport, who's the county's normal financial advisors. And so Fabian can kind of give you a little bit more of kind of just the specifics as to the legislation that you're approving tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Walters?
So the resolution in front of you will approve the purchase contract with Piper Sandler from the sale today. So earlier today, there was a sale where the bonds were sold to several purchasers. This negotiated transaction is memorialized by a bond purchase agreement. That agreement is Exhibit A to the resolution. That bond purchase agreement has the bond terms, has the conditions of sale, and it lays out what items are needed for us to close. And it allows the underwriter to have certain outs if needed, if there were certain market conditions. In addition to the purchase agreement, there's also attached a supplemental indenture as Exhibit B. The supplemental indenture is the document which it's almost like a legal contract between the county and the bondholders, and it involves a trustee which will make the payments for the bonds. In addition to that, the resolution provides for the authority for the county executive to sign both documents, and the rest of the closing documents for the closing, which will take place January 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Council, any questions? Mr. Wagner, anything?
No, the only thought I was having as he was speaking was this is very different than what we typically see in terms of bond sales, because they come before the council and they approve it. This was a negotiated sale, which is something a little bit not foreign, but a little different. Can you just give any hint at how the negotiated sale, how you selected the successful entity that is the one on this?
So as far as the underwriter, our financial advisor, Davenport, along with kind of the rest of the team, myself, the county attorney, representatives of MuniCap, who are the administrators of the TIF, all of us received proposals from various underwriters as to the services that they would have. and the cost. And then we decided that Piper was the best option there. And then they're more or less kind of going out there. They're taking on the risk when they're underwriting, and they're securing and selling, if you will, the bonds. Because kind of how the bonds work is there's a whole lot of each year of the bonds are different. They have different coupons, they have different maturities, all of this. So there's different markets out there. So there may be one particular investor might want something in years 1 through 5, and then another one might be looking for something in years 25 through 30. And so they're working with them kind of competitively. And what we end up seeing is that we had more investors coming in necessarily than we had bonds available. So there are some restructuring negotiations that kind of go on with all those different investors. This was very much while it was negotiated sale, it certainly had elements of a competitive sale because of that. It wasn't like a negotiated sale in the sense of just one entity was the only person who was purchasing the bonds, and we kind of more or less had to take or leave the offer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else? All right, seeing no more questions, as you know, typically we introduce something, we wait till the next meeting, but because of the importance and the timing of this, we are going to move on this evening. So Ms. Dix, or may I have a motion, please?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods,
I move to approve resolution 001-21.
you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. It's moved and seconded to approve resolution 00121. Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah,
Aye.
Being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, resolution 00121 is approved. Bear with me just a second, please. Agenda item number 4, consideration of petitions, applications, appointments, and nominations. Executive appointments, Jenny Jerkowski, Director of Department of Planning and Zoning. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods,
I move to approve Jenny Jerkowski as the Director to Department of Planning and Zoning.
thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. It's moved and seconded to approve Jenny Jerkowski as a Director to the Department of Planning and Zoning. Is there any discussion? Mr. Schroeds.
I just want to say I wish her well and congratulate her on this appointment. She's been in the capacity of Deputy Director now for 4 years, but I've known Jenny for quite a while. I'm a former planner. We actually worked side by side in the mid-2000s, and I know she's going to do a fabulous job as Director. Just want to leave those words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds, and I would agree with Mr. Schroeds in all of my involvement with Ms. Jarkowski. She's always been there to answer the phone and answer the questions. So with that, any other comments? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Congratulations, Jenny. Number 2, David Culver, Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods,
move to approve David Culver as the Deputy Director to Department of Planning and Zoning.
thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. It's moved and seconded to approve Mr. Culver as Deputy Director to the Department of Planning and Zoning. Is there any discussion? I will say that yesterday I had the opportunity to sit and speak with Mr. Culver. I believe he's going to be a great fit, has been here since 2018, I believe, and look forward to working with him in the future. Any other comments? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Congratulations, Mr. Culver. Karen Holt, Deputy Director of the Department of Community and Economic Development. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods.
move to approve the appointment of Karen Holt as Deputy Director to the Department of Community and Economic Development.
Thank you. Is it second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Moved and seconded to approve Karen Holt as the Deputy Director to the Department of Community and Economic Development. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
Being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Tiffany Stevens, Personnel Officer of the Department of Human Resources as of January 30th, 2021. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods.
move to approve Tiffany Stevens as Personnel Officer to the Department of Human Resources as of January 30th, 2021.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Giangiordano. Thank you. It's moved and seconded to approve Ms. Tiffany Stevens as Personnel Officer to the Department of Human Resources as of January 30th, 2021. Is there any discussion? Mr. Schroeds.
I just want to say, I know she's going to do an outstanding job. She's fulfilled the role of a deputy director for the last 4 years. But also I want to congratulate Jim Richardson, JR, on his retirement of 22 years with Harford County. He not only was the director of human resources when he first started, but then he was also the Office of Economic Development Director as well. And then he came back to where he started from. But, you know, he's a good friend. He's done an outstanding job, and just wish him well in his retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Anyone else? Mr. Giangiordano.
I also want to congratulate Jim on his retirement, and I want to congratulate Tiffany Stevens on her appointment as director. I've worked with Tiffany on a couple different things. I think she'll do an outstanding job. She knows everything inside out, very knowledgeable, and we're glad that we have her as our director, and I wish her well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giangiordano. Anyone else? I have to agree with my colleagues. I think she's going to be an excellent fit, and we all have a great working relationship with her for a good while. So, Ms. Dixon.
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Congrats, Tiffany. Nicole Barnwell, Deputy Director of the Department of Human Resources as of January 30th, 2021. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods.
move to approve Nicole Barnwell as Deputy Director to the Department of Human Resources as of January 30, 2021.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Schroeds. Moved and seconded to approve Nicole Barnwell, Deputy Director to the Department of Human Resources as of January 30th, 2021. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon.
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Congratulations, Nicole. Agenda item number 5, special presentations. Harford County Public Schools Education Update. Dr. Sean Bolson, Superintendent of Harford County Public Schools. Dr. Bolson, I want to thank you for being here this evening. As you know, due to some of the comments and questions that we received over the last few council meetings, I thought it was important for you to come and speak with us this evening, give us an update on where we're at We can talk about your plan moving forward. And also, you and I speak on a very regular basis, and some of my colleagues don't have that luxury. So they're going to be asking you some questions this evening to try to gather more information. So with that, have at it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente, all of the council members. I appreciate the opportunity. I know you've had a lot of phone calls, comments, public comments, emails throughout this. This pandemic has brought a lot of attention to many subjects, and I know education has been among the most addressed. And so I want to review, I did a presentation for our Board of Education last evening, and I want to review some of the major points I hit there and describe really where we stand right now in Harford County Public Schools. So we are constantly working to upgrade the service we provide to our students and the operations of the school system. We have, and you are receiving from me every Friday, well, not directly from me, from our board, every Friday, an update that I provide them, which includes both any changes we're making to our operations, our planning, but it also includes celebrations and information about, things that are going on in the school system. And that's coming to you every Friday. And that represents, a great deal of ongoing work. So if you want to get a sense of how much is occurring in a given week, you can review that, because it's a pretty packed update that you get every Friday. As recently as the weeks just before the holiday break and in the first week since we've returned, last week we had 8 PTA focus groups coordinated by our coordinator, Family and Community Partnerships in Stapleton, but then working closely with the PTA around the county. So they had 8 different parent focus groups. We have groups going on with teachers, students, our operations staff, administrators, and we're looking at, other populations that we need to be spending time learning from. Talking about not only their experiences so far with virtual learning and the work that's occurred this fall, but also beginning to plan for what does a post-COVID education look like. And we know that there's a lot that we've learned that's been good, that we want to hang on to. And there's also, we've learned a lot in this time. I'd also like to take a minute just to recognize, while I know you want to hear more about in person, to just take a second to acknowledge that since March, we have acquired devices for every single student in our school district. As of now, we have some form of connectivity, and not that we provided it. In fact, a partnership with all of you, with the county government, with the resources and support we've received from County Executive's Office, particularly in the additional CARES Act funding that came in, the work that you've heard about this evening with regard to connectivity. We have only a small handful of students who don't have some type of connectivity to access the virtual learning. The school system's given out nearly 900 hotspots to a mixture of staff and students, the majority of the students. Our Education Foundation, one of our other partners, has been signing people up for internet and helping defray some of those costs. And we know that our families and everyone's contributing in different ways. Families are taking their children to relatives who have better internet and things. So this is a multifaceted approach. And with you as partners to help that, we have achieved a great deal. A lot of work with regard to the curriculum, a tremendous amount of training for all of our employees to be able to deliver what we're doing now. And our work around that and refining that and strengthening that is constant. And so I guess what I'd like to return to is, I know the topic tonight is more a focus on the in-person learning. And I know you've heard in many comments, or it's been suggested, that we don't have a plan. And we have a very robust plan. We have a very detailed plan. However, we don't have a schedule. And the reason for that is by design. The virus is not paying great attention to dates right now. We can't control when the metrics go up, when the metrics go down. Collectively, we do have influence over that. That is very much our public behavior, our behavior that influences what's happening with the metrics. But to say that on such and such a date, we will start X at this point, we don't have control over that. Our plan has been completely driven by the metrics. It will continue to be driven by those metrics. So the plan that we had in place, many of you are familiar with what was going on in September. We began with our learning centers where it was students who needed to be in school. They were there 5 days a week. We had coverage for them, but they were still learning virtually. By October, we transitioned to hybrid, where our staff were back in the building providing direct instructional support to the students. Some students were in 1 day a week, some students were in 5 days a week, particularly based on need in many cases. And then, as we all saw in early November, our metrics started to spike, and in the county, we reached a peak, the case rate peak on November 22nd, just a week after we pressed pause to our in-person learning and returned everyone to virtual. Our last day for in-person learning in the county was November 13th. That plan, as I indicated, is in place, but it's on pause. And when our metrics return to a place where it is safe to provide in-person learning, that is what we'll be doing. Quick reminder, of course, the metrics I'm talking about are the positivity rate and the new case rate, the thresholds that have been set by the Maryland Department of Health. Is a 5% positivity rate and 15 cases per 100,000. You, I'm sure, are fully aware of where our rates are right now, well in excess of those numbers. And so I do want to read one thing, because there's been another question around this, and that is the guidance we are using was released initially in a joint release from the Governor's Office, the Maryland State Department of Education, and the Maryland Department of Health. It has been updated as recently as November 13th. And that's significant because there's been a lot of pressure to change these metrics. And you've heard a lot of people suggesting that we should be using different metrics or we should be looking at different research. Our State Department of Health has had the opportunity to change this and has stayed essentially consistent with the metrics are here. And that's the guidance that the school system is using. And that's the guidance that we discuss regularly with our local health department. So page 2 of this guidance, I just want to put this out there because, again, with all the suggestions that we look at different research, we suggest different parameters. Question 2 on page 2 of this guidance document says, who must follow this guidance and under what authority? And the answer there is all Maryland public and non-public schools must follow the guidance contained in this document regarding COVID-19 mitigation actions. I'll skip down a line. Persons in charge of schools at the local and building level must follow the instructions from the secretary and the health officers. Schools should work with local health department for additional guidance regarding safe reopening. And I would say thank you to our local health department officials. We worked closely with Dr. Moy until his retirement. We've had a tremendous relationship with Ms. Austin in the interim, and of course now you've all met Dr. Bashine. He's an equally outstanding partner. I've now spoken with him 3 times. We're learning a lot about what we're going to be doing together, but we acknowledge that this is a challenge that we all need to continue to work towards. So where we stand right now is when our metrics, those that are identified in the guidance document, get back down to the safe levels that are identified in that guidance document, we will return to the hybrid model where we were in October. We have a sequence that we'll be following after that. If our metrics continue in a good direction, we'll be able to expand our hybrid to secondary schools and begin bringing those students back. The hybrid at the time for most students was 1 day, and that's where we will start until we assess what we learned very quickly when we went into place is the hybrid we had going. We had really tremendous feedback on the experiences students were having when they were in school. What happened within just a day or two of the hybrid beginning is families who previously hadn't been certain that they wanted to send their children in, they heard the good experiences and they said, they wanted to be in for the hybrid as well. Acknowledging that it was only 1 day, but the idea of doing more days per week for students when they're following our social distancing guidelines, if we tried to offer more days, we would have to be turning people away because in order to bring in following social distancing, that relies on a certain percentage of families not sending their children at all. And what we were hearing is there's a great interest from the parents to have their children in school. I know you've heard that. We were seeing a big uptick in those wanting to come in. And so we had to leave the number of days at the lower level of 1 because we had so many families wanting to send their children. And we want to make sure that we're not turning anyone away for whatever hybrid model we have in place. So our planning is to be sure we leave space to not be turning anyone away at whatever level we're delivering. So with that said, I want to touch on, so when our metrics get where we are, we will return to that level of hybrid. And so I want to touch on 2 more things before I finish my remarks. And of course, I will have some questions. One thing you've heard a lot about from public comment and from concerns in the community is the topic of mental health. And of course, that's something that we take very, very seriously. I know when Ms. Austin presented to you a few weeks back, she touched on this and she pointed out that I think the first thing that every family needs to hear is if you have serious concerns about the mental health for your individual child, you have to reach out and seek help. Our local health department has many resources for really acute concerns. 911 is the most important thing to do. But of course, the Klein Family Harvard Crisis Center is one of our best resources in town for that. But behind that, in addition to the many resources the health department has in place, the school system also has a vast array of resources for the topic of mental health. The entry point to most of that is through those people who our families and our students know best. Our teachers and our counselors can recommend the types of support people would need. We do have a website, an email address, mentalhealthsupport@hcps.org, that people can use if they want to engage in the conversation and look for mental health support. We can connect them to the various supports that are out there. But also, I have a document that I can share with you. I'll have someone send that over in the morning that summarizes all of the mental health work going on in the school system and details the work of our nurses, our social workers, our pupil health personnel workers, and our psychologists. They've been immensely busy, many home visits, many individual calls and individual contacts virtually. There is a great deal of work going on because we know that the mental health, and frankly, the mental health isn't just an issue for children. We see it in all the adults around us as well. And so, as we've indicated, in addition to providing supports for our kids, we have a lot of training. We have resources for our staff. We have guidance that we've provided through some of our parent outreach events to provide support for parents. We've had a lot of training for staff to help them deal with a variety of things they might confront. One of the most important, and you've probably heard of before, is the QPR training, which is the training we provide people to identify the indicators of suicidal ideation. And we've trained many staff and students on this topic. And so, again, I just wanted to touch on the mental health as something that's a critical element of the work we're doing. So I'll close the comments on the topic of vaccines. We were encouraged to hear in the governor's press conference last Tuesday that I think the word he used in that was that teachers would be included in 1B. They've later clarified to indicate that all school system employees will be part of the phasing for the vaccines in phase 1B. And we recognize that Harvard County, our health department, we're still working through 1A. All of our nurses were vaccinated in 1A. And in fact, our nursing staff has been actively engaged in all of the clinics. And so they're part of the work delivering vaccines now. Just this weekend, we've had some outreach from the health department because as they're sort of coming to the end of 1A, and in some cases they've had doses come in that maybe they didn't have 1A people eligible for. So we know that some people who would qualify in 1B have had opportunities to get vaccines, and we sent contact information for some of our food and nutrition workers that if there are some of the waiting list type doses available, that we wanted to start with our people who've been on the front lines and are interacting with the public still on a daily basis. And we have a number of others who will include kind of on that wait list until we really get into the full planning. So we are counting we have approximately 5,200 employees, and we also have 600 bus contractors. And all of them will be eligible for it. All of them will need to have a vaccine done. We can't say for certain at this point what the uptake percentage will be with them, but we're looking at the uptake percentage that we've experienced in the county, and we will be planning for clinics. Our current planning is that these clinics would start in February, and our goal is to have all of our people who are interested in receiving a vaccine vaccinated in a relatively short period of time, hopefully over a period of 5 to 6 days. And so that will require some tremendous logistical work. But as I said, our nursing services have already been working closely with the health department. So we have the beginnings of a plan for that. My expectation, if you just think briefly about the logistics, with 54 schools and then a number of offices, we'll have to have at least, if we're trying to do this across 5 or 6 days, we'll have approximately 11 schools per day that need to be fully vaccinated. And so what will likely happen is we'll assign schools to particular days, and then those schools will be closed for instruction on that one day when they have those assignments, so that we, can get the people out and into the vaccinations through the lines. First dose in February, the expectation that they'll have a second dose in March. So, of course, the vaccine will be an incredibly important tool that will help us return to more in-person instruction. It's not going to have an immediate impact. I mean, the idea of someone getting vaccinated, it won't be all of a sudden everyone's protected and we can just start again. What we've learned from the state health department and the briefing calls we have with the state health officer is contact tracing, social distancing, those sorts of things are still going to be in place until the overall transmission rates have reduced to a safer level. And so we expect we'll still, need to be dealing with the quarantining and isolating that occurs with regard to any contact tracing or anyone who comes in contact with any close contacts to symptomatic people. But again, this vaccine is the best tool we have right now, and it will be the most important thing that brings us back on that path to full in-person learning. And so I guess what I would want to close with is it will be very important that as many people in this community accept those vaccinations as possible, because the quicker we get more people done, the quicker our metrics will move into a place where we can have all of our students in person again. So with that, I will turn it over for questions. And of course, I look forward to hearing from Dr. Bashai and the presentation following me.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Council, your time for questions. Mr. Wagner.
We all, as you know, we were all anxious to get the children back in school. Your explanation of what it's going to take to get them back there matches up with the question that I had asked the health department to submit back to me, which they did. It's exactly the same answer. It basically, health department and the state board of education are the ones responsible for calling the children back in and saying it's a safe environment for them. My other question was, and I wasn't sure of your statements, are you requiring your Board of Education employees, your teaching staff, and also other staff, such as the bus contractors, are you requiring them to get the vaccination?
Thank you for clarifying that. I'm glad someone asked if that wasn't clear. No, we are not. I don't believe, particularly because the vaccines are under an emergency order, that anyone is being required. So we are offering it to everybody. But as we said, with all of the other guidance and social distancing and those things in place, the vaccine will really serve as one more tool to help, address this, but we will not be requiring.
Right. I thank you for coming and sharing this with us this evening and helping clear up some muddy waters out there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Wagner. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Dr. Bolson, for coming out. It's definitely helpful. One of the comments you made along the lines of what Councilmember Wagner brought up was the state is setting the guideline of when reopening. With the word or the rumor with 2 other counties opening back up, with going against the state's guidelines, what is there ramifications for that, or how do they get to that when we're still staying closed, and how's that working?
Well, I can suggest some things, but I can't answer for them. So, of course, we're aware of the school system that returned to a hybrid this week. But of course, the school system made that decision despite the guidance of the local health officer and the head of the hospital who was in the meeting and the recommendation of the school administration. So how that's working, I know anecdotally, from having spoken to my colleague, that they have challenges staffing the buildings because of the disruptions with people being sick and being isolated, being quarantined. And so I know that's a challenge, and I wouldn't recommend, and I feel fortunate that our board hasn't chosen to take sort of a directive approach on this. And then there is some consideration for, some districts have looked at bringing in small groups in some settings. Right now, the only small group we have, but I believe this position is supported by our metrics. We only have those students who need the access to internet, and we've been working very aggressively to reduce that. But I can't answer for those who are, may or may not be following the guidance carefully.
So is there a penalty from the state at that point? And part one and part two of that is, who made that decision? Was it at your level as the superintendent, or did the school board itself make that decision, or was there outside force that made that decision for them, or how how that came about?
I can't speak for them. Like I said, I know the school board directed the school system in the other county. The school board directed the school system to return into the hybrid, despite the recommendation. Again, consequences, I can't speak for that. I mean, what, as sort of a law-abiding citizen is, and then of course, I am also speaking to the health board right now, that, the guidance we've gotten from the State Department of Health primarily is that school systems need to follow this guidance.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Giordano?
Good evening, Dr. Bolson. Thank you. So is it the school board's decision, or is it your decision to bring kids back into a hybrid learning environment?
That's a good legal question, and it's one that we asked early on. I think most of our local education attorneys, because this is something I've discussed extensively, some school systems have brought these decisions and these plans to the board for a vote. Others have not. Generally, operational activities, administrative decisions like this rest with the superintendent, but there are certainly circumstances, and clearly, as you see, precedents for a school board to step in and direct the superintendent if they act as a body, best they have a majority. So there's not a clear answer to that question. I think it's split probably right down the middle in the state. Some districts have had these decisions. Everything's been voted on by the board. In other cases, it's been the superintendent. In Harford County, while I asked the board initially to give sort of affirmative vote to support the initial plan that we rolled out this summer, since then, we have not called for a vote on these topics. And at least at this point, I don't see that being something that the board has been interested in pursuing to vote on each operational decision, because normally that sort of exceeds the board's responsibility.
Okay, so I'm clear, and you're saying it's pretty much your decision, not the board's decision, where some of the other
Correct.
counties,
yes,
it was the board's decision and not the superintendent's decision. Okay. With everybody wearing masks and social distancing, shouldn't that be enough for you to have 25%, just like restaurants and stores and hospitals, that kids can come back into to teach? I mean, we've got 40 people waiting to talk to us, thinking that we have the power to have you bring the kids back to school. And we're going to listen to 40 parents probably, say, our kids should go back to school. Why aren't they going back to school? Which is really a good question. And if restaurants and some other places are all open and everybody's wearing masks and social distancing, the size of these you have in schools, and I would think you should be able to have 25% in where some teachers want to come back, and obviously some parents want to come back after students.
So thank you. And you're absolutely right. I mean, many people want their children back in school, and many people have, applied their observations from other settings, like restaurants, like grocery stores, like those sorts of things. And of course, we've heard about what's happening in other states, and the guidance in those states is different. Our guidance, again, and you can argue whether this is accurate or whether it's appropriate because, one thing I've learned going through this is whether you want to be fully in person or you think we should be fully at home and leaning more towards a more sort of conservative, safe approach, you can find the science to support that decision because there's a lot of advocacy, there is a lot of work out there. And our guidance document reads pretty clearly where the positivity rate is over 5%. And if the new case rate is over 15%, this is from the same page in the guidance document I quoted to you earlier, that what it says, if you're over 15 per 100,000 new cases, that you should be in limited or no in-person programs. That's the language. So there is room. And I think for us, the interpretation at that point was for those who needed the connectivity, those who we considered the limited or no, because what we've been told, and that is that these numbers are not hard and fast. You need to follow them as, if we go from 4.9 to 5.1, that we shut right down. But we didn't go from 4.9 to 5.1, and we're not lingering around 5.1. We're at nearly 9%. And we're today 2.5 times the new case rate. So we're not on the edge of maybe being in a high risk zone. We're like deeply into it. And so I think, again, as there's some degree of discretion here, clearly, and I think we do. And that's where the conversations, because this isn't, talking to the health department and they're directing us to do a thing. This is the conversation where we look at this. What does it mean in our current context? There are local things going on, and it is a collaborative discussion. And at the end, I think there's some agreement, working with the health department around what the right decisions need to be. And I do suspect that following my comments, that Dr. Pashai, I think, is prepared to talk a little bit about how we apply these decisions also.
The private schools don't follow the same information that the health departments give them. So what would you say to the 40 people that are going to come on later on and ask, why can't you open back up? I understand the 9%. So you're saying is that we're going to have to lower the percentage before they open up. But what would you say to the 40 or so people that are going to have talk about our ability to get you to reopen back up again?
Because
we can.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, going through this, I mean, emotions have been very strong, and I haven't found that people are particularly interested in being convinced. I can't be accountable for the private schools. There are a couple things that come into play there. One, I do think it is easier for small educational settings, individual schools, small school districts to be a little more nimble in the moving around with their plans. But at the same time, I cannot answer for what's acceptable in the private school, because to me, when I read this document, it's very clear. All public and non-public schools must follow the guidance contained in this document.
John Carroll just announced that they're going to bring kids back 2 days a week, starting in I think last week in January. So,
yeah, I heard that as well. Thank you,
Mr. Giangiordano. Let me move on to Mr. Schroeds.
Yep.
Thank you, Council President, and Councilman Woods and Mr. Giangiordano kind of hit on some of those questions, and I know we have a number of speakers at the end, so I have a whole bunch of questions, but with so many people trying to be heard, I'm going to cut down on some of them. But I guess what I'm going to say is that I am glad that you have a plan. It's more of a matter of when. I guess what I'm trying to understand is there any improvements to that plan from how it was put out in the early fall, because I'm sure you've learned some things. And, whether, I know you can't speak for how private schools do it in other jurisdictions, because I've got many friends, of course, living in Harford County. They move a little further north to the Southeastern School District in York County. Many of my friends also have their students in the private school. So we are hearing from them. I'm just wanting to know what, what are we learning from them and how can we improve how we did things in the fall? Because what I've noticed, and of course, I have a daughter, 11 years old in fifth grade, desperately wants to go back to school. And she has breakdowns at least once a day, if not more. And all she wants is to see her teachers and her friends and be back in that environment, as you know. I know we had some CARES money that came in, and I know that some of that money was used, of course, for the devices and the Wi-Fi. But, back from the fall when I was watching my daughter Madeline, has a fabulous teacher. Miss Keller is probably one of the best teachers out there, and she's doing great. But what we noticed is that, when she was in school, that the teachers are basically teaching in front of their computer screen, and not much different than really being at home. It's hard for them to do two things at once. So I guess my question is any of that money being used for other type of video equipment, whiteboards, and things like that, so the teacher can pretty much teach like she normally did? It's just that you're going to be videoed so you can kind of teach the ones that are in school while also having the students that are remote. I think that if we could, have some better technology, and if some of those funds were used for that, I feel like that would be better. And, I don't know if you can answer that. I got a couple more questions here, but I was just hoping to see that you've learned from some of these other jurisdictions in the private schools. I realize it's totally different, but there's a lot of data out there, and I know you like data. So,
well, let me start with what you've given me here. I think I've captured. If I missed any of it, let me know.
Right.
So improvements to that plan from what we knew in the fall. So, I guess I would let me start with some of the things that won't have changed yet, because, for example, one of the hotly debated topics about our plan is whether we should be following a 6 feet social distancing. And just to put it as bluntly as I can, at this point, that is one of the key elements of the social distancing that's included in the plan. I know there's been a great deal of advocacy for 3 feet because that came out in recommendations from some very reputable sources. But again, that's one of those areas where I indicated that the Maryland Department of Health, I know they've had these conversations, but they haven't changed that guidance. And I would argue that there's probably a good reason for that. And I think our health officials could talk to, what's happened in those conversations and that not having changed. So the things like how we interpret the social distancing, because they've been pretty cut and dried. It's 6 feet, and we've done the measuring, and we know how many students we can have in a given class. So those sorts of things haven't changed. So the major structure of what is available to us under the certain social distance, the current guidance we have is, limits us to the number of students who can be in. And then all of the other things that, we put the protocols in place, and I think our people did a fantastic job dealing with these, and that's with the masks. The kids did a great job complying with the masks, despite a lot of concerns early on that we'd have trouble with them. The cleaning protocols that are taking place in our buildings, a great deal of work went into making sure we were dramatically ramping up the cleaning. Hand washing protocols, again, the practices of how kids get access to that every day. Work on the ventilation. Our maintenance team went around and maximized ventilation to the best standard we could in all of our buildings. The social distancing is in place. So those things that we had been working on, and we had the protocols and practices in place for all of those. Now you were closing there, the CARES money we have spent on a number of things. The devices was the biggest part of that. Webcams are something that we've known would help because it would give the teachers a little more flexibility and some better resolution. Those were on back order for many, many months. They have now come in, and they're finally just this week being distributed to schools. So we know that will help with some of the virtual learning, and it will also help, again, give the teachers a little bit more flexibility when they return into the hybrid setting where they need to be teaching in 2 places again. Whiteboards were something we were hoping to be able to do with the additional CARES Act coming from the county executive. We didn't have quite enough for that, but we have another round of stimulus coming in, and that's something that we might be able to do with the next round of stimulus. We used funds, again, we've spent a lot of money on PPE, but a big part of what we also spent money on was providing more funds for child nutrition. And we also spent quite a bit of money on staffing the learning centers and identifying the proctors, because when the learning center model switched to the hybrid model, those extra hands that we had available in the building, because we had all of our staff in, but our kids needed so much that we kept those extra learning center proctors in place, and they have turned out to be just tremendous employees, and they've been providing that extra level of support in the buildings, but also serving as substitutes as we've needed them, because identifying subs has been a challenge. So again, there has been a lot of learning. There have been some enhancements. The training is nonstop. And I think, all of our staff, I hear it every day when I talk to the principals about what they're seeing in their people. Their learning curve is huge, and their growth has been just amazing through this. But they're still hungry for more learning. So every day people are, learning new ways to engage with kids and make that better.
Another set.
Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
Thank you, Dr. Bolson. The next set, I'm just going to read these kind of together. And one of them ties in with the recent email that I received that I hadn't thought about. These other ones are all my questions. One is, I was wondering if you could bring back the one-on-one tutoring sessions that you had offered in the summer. Obviously, a lot of students are falling behind right now. So that was one. I wanted to see if you had statistics.
So let me cut you off before you go to that one. It is my understanding we still have those in place. Tutoring is still available. If we need to do a better job putting that out there, I will make sure we do. But the supports, both for ongoing individual support for students, but also looking into our summer supports, we've put a request in for our operating budget to do more this summer with individual work. But we're also expecting that, the updated stimulus funds, as those come in, that's another area we'll be able to provide those types of supports.
Great, thank you. I was unaware of that. I'm going to roll real quick. I'm under pressure to make it quick because we got people waiting.
It's all right. Good questions.
Promised. I guess how many kids are not logging on regularly? The other one kind of goes with that potentially. Where are the highest rates of absenteeism? Another question about what's being done for tech students.
Hold up, let him catch it.
Yeah, you got to slow down, Mr. Schroeder. Let me try to do a couple at a time.
Just let him catch up.
So first we talked about the tutoring, and now the logging on and attendance. We did a presentation at our board meeting, the last board meeting, I think it was December 21st. It was the last board meeting before the break, where we looked at the impact of the first quarter grades. And like everyone around us, we're fully aware that our students have struggled during this, and we've had student failures at a higher rate. We've had, students who struggled in many ways. The attendance is kind of an interesting one, though, because actually our attendance rate, because we're recording it by who's logging on, is still quite good, actually. And in fact, it rivals our attendance rate in a normal year. However, we are very aware of the phenomena of students who log in and then walk away from their computer, and so whether you want to call it ghosting or whatever they're doing, that engagement is a significant concern. So, we've done the robocalls for attendance for years, but we have, in addition to our people who are always doing outreach, particularly our pupil personnel workers, who have the responsibility for those students who really aren't showing up and aren't engaging. We're doing the home visits for that sort of things. But also, The learning center proctors that we hired to help with learning centers, and then I said provided us support for subbing and support in the schools. We have actually repurposed, sort of retasked them to help us with in-person calls, not just robocalls, because we're constantly reaching out, trying to find ways to make the personal contacts with students and families when our students aren't engaging the way we need to. So that's an ongoing effort, and we're constantly directing resources to make sure our students are engaged where we can. And then you said something about tech students. I didn't let you finish the question, so why don't I let you finish the question and then?
No, that's okay. Just tell us what's being done. I know probably others will have that comment, or you probably heard at the end, but what's being done for the tech students? I mean, this is really affecting them because they're supposed to have on-hands learning, which is great for a lot of students, and they're missing out, of a lot of that. So.
Right now, that's hard. When we were moving into the hybrid, that was a group that we were targeting for bringing in for in-person activities on kind of a different schedule. That is on hold now, so we know that is a problem. We want to do more of the hands-on. We want students to have those work-based learning experiences as well as the hands-on stuff. So less happening there. I know I'm not giving you a complete answer because I know there is more going on than I'm able to describe, but that's something that I might need to, we either can send you in the context of the board update, or I'll send you a sort of written response about that if there's more there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Councilman
Thank
Beal.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolson, for coming out this evening. I'll be brief. Now, what I would like to know is, you said your plan is just based on the metrics. Are we looking at the effect that it's having on the students? I mean, we know that students are struggling. We know that there's social problems. And also, are we looking at our seniors that are competing against other states for college scholarships, and their grades are down? Are we taking any of this into consideration when we're looking at reopening in as far as in-person learning? And I'll just twofold. Once we are able to go back to some form of in-person learning or hybrid, do you have a plan as to who's going to come back first? How are we going to implement that? We're going to go with the pre-K. Could you elaborate on that? So it's sort of a twofold question.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I think in some of the answers I've given already that, we're very clearly attending to the other effects on students, about our awareness of the impacts on the academics. That's what we talked about at our board meeting in January. We presented that in December. We know about that. I think in my initial comments, I talked a lot about the mental health. So we're very aware of the impact that this pandemic and virtual learning has had on our students. And so, of course, that's considered. Of course, that contributes to our urgency, and it's always present in the conversations related to whether we, are changing. But again, it's the question of what are the community transmission rates, and at what point do those rates exceed the impact of the other issues, and which one should we be looking at? We're always attending to both. There's no clear yes or no answer as to what is right. But again, as I've indicated, our decision has been to comply with the law, comply with our expectations, follow that guidance. But that means, again, we're addressing the mental health through the resources and the activities I've suggested. We're doing a lot with regard to intervention for students. We're doing a lot to continue to enhance the instruction. So we're not ignoring the impacts. And then the idea of seniors competing for college scholarships. This is a pandemic affecting everyone. And so higher ed, obviously, is having really significant conversations around what their year is going to look like next also. And they're aware that different places are having different experiences. Higher ed has always had to account for local differences in the way they do things and the way they look at transcripts and the way they look at. So, we have confidence that our students who, were excellent candidates for scholarships, whether they be athletic or, your athletic scholars, a lot of times, the real superstars are identified long before their senior year. But we know some people really rely on that senior year to shine. This has been a hard year for everybody. It's the rare place that's having a normal season. But again, our priority is still the in-person learning first. So it's not like we haven't forgotten that. And then with regard to the priority of who comes back first, our rollout in the fall that we were kind of in the middle of started with pre-K to 2, then went 3 to 5, then went on to 6 through 8, and then finally 9 through 12. But in addition to that, and again, our continuity learning plan lays this out, and this is still what we're following. I could go back to it and look, but we have various special ed groups that are in the first wave. We have our English language learners. Our research is showing us that, there are some of the students impacted most by this. So they come in sooner with priority for potentially more days where we can work that in also. So we have in our plan that is current, it's on the website, it's continuity learning plan. All those details are there. So we very much have a priority list.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything?
Yes, Council President, thank you. Just to button this up, Dr. Bolston, how many years have you been in the education field?
That's a tough question without thinking about it. This is maybe 27, 26.
26, 27. So it's safe to say that you love educating kids, young people, and you don't want to see kids out of school, correct?
That's a very accurate statement. This has been challenging every day.
Very, very good. Okay, and secondly, to your knowledge, are we still in the midst of a pandemic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and thirdly, you said the standard for statewide is 5%, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you know the positivity rate of the county right now?
Today, the exact number, we were between 8 and 9% today, and the new case rate was approximately 45. I have it pulled up, but yes, I'm very aware of, without remembering, 40.55 new case rate and 8.3% positivity.
So that means that we have exceeded the standard for having kids in school, correct? Based off of the Maryland standards, correct?
The guidance reads limited or no in-person activities when we've exceeded those standards.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Mr. Giordano, you have another question? Thank you. Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you, Council President. Just had a question. I had a constituent that sent me an email, kind of has to do with differing abilities. I would like to know a little bit about that. But this specific one is that he has a 20-year-old son with autism. It's his last year of high school. COVID has set him back and other special needs kids back far more than we could ever expect. Are there any thoughts on extending schooling for those students? And then just to kind of wrap something up, I was kind of thinking when I was talking about the technical schools that you may want to reach out, or just a suggestion to reach out to York County Technical Training School. Dr. David Thomas is the principal executive director up there, whatever his title is. And also another good friend, John Stearns, is a vice principal up there. And they've been open throughout this whole time. And their technical school is probably 5 times the size of what we have at Hartford Tech. So just an idea to reach out to our neighbors, just about 50 minutes from Bel Air. But if we could go back to that differing abilities question specific to the 20-year-old. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Actually, that question is one that hasn't come to me yet. I can't say for certain that our special ed office has not confronted that. You know, it's a very small number of students who, you know, by law, students can remain in public school till they're 21. And of course, it's usually our students with our sort of greatest impact from special ed who are in that situation. And so I absolutely understand the question. It's a very good one. So again, you hit me with one that I specifically can't answer. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that my special ed folks have encountered that question. So I will get you an answer.
Thank you.
Mr. Woods. Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, thank you, Ms. Bolson. For a question about the tech students, once again, has there been any consideration or reach out to any of the fields, and would we be allowed to do a wider area of internships so at least the students are still getting hands-on training? I mean, is that even a possibility? I mean, it's out of school learning still. And is that something we could do?
I know there have been discussions. I would not be in a good place to answer the details of that right now. But again, I'm happy to, I think there was a question similar to that from Mr. Schroeds. I'll make sure you all get a response related to what's going on there, because I realize that's a very important topic. Just as an aside, you know, we did our budget survey recently, and we had many questions about, you know, what we're doing to prepare people for careers. And so I understand this is a really important topic here. So, but I'll have to get you a written response on that.
Okay, because we've obviously the fire service program. We're still moving forward with what we have, and that's been effective. With the current matrix and the limited, where it says limited or no school participation in school participation. Based on how you've stated how the buildings are cleaned and how the mask, the social distancing, all the matrix you have in place in the school and what you're planning on, and then on top of that with vaccines, is there an ability to at least move forward quicker on the hybrid system? I mean, we have all these things in place that everyone says is working extremely well: mask, social distancing, now the vaccine. At least would there be a way of bringing back students who parents want them to come back sooner? Because I'm sure there's still parents that will want to continue doing distance learning no matter what. So your hybrid system, but with everything you have in place, the cleaning, the mask, the social distancing, what's the harm from that? Because the matrix does say limited, with limited in school.
Yeah, limited to no. And so again, there's a bit of it. So, I mean, these are things we can keep talking about, you know, when is the right time to start expanding some of the small group activities and those sorts of things, because that's something we will keep looking at and can keep looking at. And something you sort of referenced in your question was, you know, what will be the impact of the vaccines and all that? You know, I don't know if I said this at the beginning on our last call with the state health officer, so every Friday morning, the superintendents have a conference call. And for a number of weeks now, the state superintendent and the state health officer, along with local health officers, have been joining for the first half hour just to discuss guidance and metrics and those sorts of things. And on this last call, Dr. Chan, the interim state officer, indicated that they're working on a number of adjustments to the current guidance. And we didn't get insight, at least on that call, into what those changes may be, but the degree to which, you know, if what comes back from those guidance changes includes more flexibility and different ways to review this, we will absolutely consider it. You know, what I've committed to, and I committed this to the board last night, that, you know, as you've heard, I pretty clearly state our decision-making to the guidance document. I believe there's a lot of smart people looking at that, designing that. I think think it is a good guidance document. I know there's a lot of people who might disagree, but it's provided us fairly clear guidelines, even though a lot of people are not happy with those. If it changes, I know those changes will come only after really careful consideration on their end. And but it is our expectation to follow those changes. And so, we'll be reviewing it, and I do hope for not just changes to the guidance, but I hope there's a combination of all these things where our metrics are improving because of our local behavior, that the vaccine is contributing to reduced transmission. I can promise this board that as a school system, we're going to be doing everything we can to get as many people out there and vaccinated as quickly as possible, contributing to the logistics and the support to make that happen, because we want to approach this with the same urgency that everyone's feeling. So I do see us looking for those opportunities to bring students into all those activities.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Dr. Bolson, I appreciate your patience with us this evening, and I'm going to ask you to sit with us just a little longer while we move to our next presenters, if you would, please. Council, at this time, I'd like to have general consent to sit and act as the Board of Health for agenda item 5B and C and return to the legislative session thereafter. Thank you. Dr. Bashai, you recently sent me a document that you would like to have the Board of Health's approval on. Ms. Dixon, do you have a copy of that document that you could put on the screen? And then Dr. Bashai, if you would please speak to your thoughts and importance of this document.
Yes, thank you, President Vincenti. The reason I brought this to the Board of Health is that right now the Health Department is trying to make sure we get to all of the last of the Group 1A health workers. And we're following the state's guidance. And yet, even with that, I'm concerned that not everybody knows that their group is on the list of 1As. So I wanted the Board of Health to help us be crystal clear about who exactly qualifies as a 1A. And if the Board of Health agrees with this list, we can post it on our website and start to make sure that everybody tells their neighbors and friends that are on this list, did you get your COVID-1A vaccine? Did you get your COVID vaccine? Do you know you're qualifying? If we don't make sure we reach everybody, then we could leave them behind as we move on to the 1B. So by making it as explicit as possible, we get everybody listed. The other thing is that there is a bit of ambiguity on the last two categories on the list, and I wanted to clear that up. And so I'm proposing that social workers and the workers in homeless shelters should be on the list of 1As, and that's a little ambiguous from the state. So I wanted Harford County's Board of Health to get the word out and to really say exactly what we mean about who should be on the list of 1As.
Thank you, Dr. Bashai. And at this time, I'm going to open it up to my council colleagues for any questions they may have of you before we move on it. Council, anyone? So I believe everyone has seen it. Everyone understands what it is. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Woods?
I move to approve the Health Department's letter of recommendation.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. It's moved and seconded to approve Dr. Bashai's request for this priority schedule. Any other discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Viola.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the request for the recommendation to add additional groups to the COVID-19 1A vaccination priority schedule is approved. Thank you, Dr. Bashai. And if you would, I know you're going to have an update for us and give us some information on several things. And Then Ms. Austin will follow, I believe, in reference to updates on vaccines. And I'm not sure which one of you are going to update us on our new website.
So I'll be taking off the data about the epidemic and about the website. I wanted to first remind everybody that we continue to have high rates of coronavirus. I had hoped that we might see those numbers coming down after the holidays, and it has not yet happened. Last week we had 7 new deaths. Our positivity rate is not coming down. It's still in the 8s at 8.3% test positivity, and the daily case rate per 100,000 is 40.55. I wanted to say quickly that risk sounds like a low number. It sounds like, well, 4 in a million, but it's a number we play every day. In this county, we're playing that lottery of a 4 in a million lottery every day. But guess what? If you played a lottery of 4 in a million every day for a year, you'd have an 18% chance, a 13% chance of getting COVID. So it sounds like a small number, but Harford County residents if this keeps up this high, it will infect 13% of us. And it's artificially low. It is only this low because of all the things we're doing to keep ourselves safe. It isn't naturally this low. That number wants so badly to go up. It's only staying down with all of our social distancing and mask wearing. And it's also staying that low because we don't have our schools open. Looking at the latest data from Emily Oster's database, the numbers she was proposing last November about the safety of open schools are no longer true. We've seen elementary schools in New York, Texas that have been open have the number of infections and school workers go up with masks and with social distancing. So the science that we thought we knew in November, thought we were confident, that doesn't apply when those community rates are as high as they are right now. So we have an unnaturally low but very high number. This number is 40.55 is unacceptable. We can't go back to our old activities now. We've got to get them lower. So I'm not trying to spread fear at all. I just need this county to be concerned because it's a little bit more work to do to keep ourselves safe. The victory's in sight. It's like the vaccine is here. LeBron James just joined our basketball team. This is not the time to surrender and give up on the game. So here's the great news. We are winding down our 1A vaccines, and that means we're about to move into the 1B group. That is great news. And as Dr. Bolson was saying, that would really be a game changer for our ability to safely reopen schools. Now, Marcy Austin is going to report on our progress on vaccinating the 1As and how we're going to mop up the last of the 1As. But we are now moving into the pre-registration of the 1Bs. The 1B group are people 75 and over, school teachers, school bus drivers, anybody who's working in the schools are in the 1Bs as well as assisted living. I need help from volunteers here in the community. So I want to get the people listening to this broadcast to help me round up the last of the 1As. So just to go over the list that you just passed, if you're listening to this and if you are a 1A or if you know a 1A and you don't know whether or not they've been vaccinated, call them, tell them that now is the time to tell the health department that they got missed somehow. We're talking about health workers, first responders, police, sheriff, judicial workers, correctional officers, behavioral health, pharmacy, dialysis, funeral homes, 911 dispatchers, veterinarians, social workers, and workers in homeless shelters. The list is going up on our website. You can see it there now. And please help us tell the 1As to come. Now, we're never going to turn them away. They're always 1As. They're always ahead of 1Bs. We will make room for them on our slots. We also need help from the county in pre-registering our seniors. The 75 and over group, we now have a place on our website where they can pre-register. We need their names and phone numbers. So when we can open our doors to the 1Bs, we get seniors there too. They are all of the 1Bs are treated equally. Not like one 1B is better than another. So the school officials, teachers, bus drivers are in the same exact priority as anyone 75 and over. We have to get to them all, and we're going to be starting next week. So I need this county to roll up its sleeves for me and help me. I am looking for volunteers that can help us man phone banks to get help. So you'll be seeing us calling out to people in the community to help us pre-register the seniors. I'm looking for people who can find and call seniors in the county. If you have a telephone and fingers, I need you. If you can use IT to help pre-register the seniors on our website, I need you. I need medical personnel. I need human logistics, people who know how to do crowd control. I could use their help. So I know we've got a lot of people very eager to open the schools. I know it's because we love our kids here in this county. We also love our seniors. We want to protect them. And now there's something we can do to save their lives. And now both things are the same. Both goals are the same. This push to vaccinate the 1Bs helps us open our schools sooner, and it saves lives. And I know you want to use political speech and advocacy. I welcome your voices. I need your hands. I need your telephones to help me. That is just as effective at getting our kids back in school as anything else you could do. So after we're done talking about it, come to the health department. Our website is open for you to volunteer and work together to help make this virus history. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcy for an update on our vaccine progress to date. We're really thrilled to be making this much progress.
Good evening, Marcy.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you, Dr. Bishai, and good evening, Council President Vincenti and members of the Council. I just wanted to go over the progress to date for our mass vaccination initiative. When I mentioned priority group 1A, that includes the exact list that Dr. Bishai just mentioned. Here's the timeline to date for receiving and administering COVID vaccine. So on December 21st, the Health Department received the first 100 doses of Moderna vaccine, and all those doses were given on 12/30 to the first phase of priority group 1A, which included vaccinators and vaccination clinic staff to assure they receive their vaccines in preparation to administer shots at all the future vaccination clinics. On December 29th, the Health Department received 1,400 doses of Moderna. These 1,400 doses were administered at our first week-long clinic for first responders and healthcare workers in priority group 1A, and that was during last week, the January 4th through the 8th at Patterson Mill High School. On January 4th, the Health Department received 2,200 doses. All of these 2,200 doses are currently being administered this week, January 11th through the 15th, at Patterson Mill and also at McFall Senior Center, also to priority group 1A. On January 11th, the Health Department received 1,900 first doses of vaccine for priority group 1A, and the Health Department plans to administer all 1,900 doses the week of January 19th through the 22nd, so that's next week. We also received 100 second doses, and those are reserved for the priority group 1A who were originally vaccinated on the December 30th clinic. The second dose will be held on January 27th for the original group. So to date, the Health Department has received a total of 5,700 doses. As of today, the Health Department has administered 2,237 vaccines. All 5,700, though, will be used by January 22nd. We expect to receive notice this Saturday about the next shipment. As part of the 1A plan, this is what we've done so far with the assisted living facilities. Harford County has invited all assisted living staff to their COVID-19 vaccination clinics this week and the week of January 19th. We are currently working with the assisted living facilities to determine how many residents are interested in receiving the COVID-19 vaccine to determine an overall dose count. We have the National Guard on hand in case we need their assistance with the actual vaccination of assisted living residents. We will start vaccinating residents the week of January 25th. And then we're receiving some feedback that assisted living facilities have responded that they are receiving vaccines already from Walgreens and CVS. Upper Chesapeake is working with the health department on a coordinated community vaccination plan, and they will be vaccinating the senior housing population and other populations as needed. We continue the strong partnership with Upper Chesapeake, both with the COVID testing initiative and now the mass vaccination efforts. As Dr. Bishai mentioned, we have done extensive social media posts and advertising to ensure all of the priority group 1A have the opportunity to receive their vaccine. Even as we move into group 1B, we will continue to vaccinate priority group 1A as we receive additional requests. This week, we have begun reaching out directly to the agencies and populations in group 1B, which includes education, as Dr. Bolson mentioned, food and agriculture, U.S. Postal Service, manufacturing, grocery store, public transit, and age 75 and older, so that we can have a contact name in order to send an email and link to register for an upcoming clinic. Let's see, we hope to start receiving larger shipments of vaccine in the coming weeks, and we are prepared to stand up another vaccination site and vaccination team so that we can run the clinics in unison. I've spoken with Kathy Burley, the Executive Director of Parks and Rec, and she has kindly offered the McFall Senior Center as our second site. And we will continue to use Patterson Mill as long as possible. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. And I think you hit on a important subject when you said you're prepared to receive larger doses, because Dr. Bishai and I spoke this morning, and we know that CDC is releasing larger groups of vaccines. And Dr. Bishai, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, we still don't get notified except 1 week at a time. And we can put in large requests. We're never sure that we're going to get them until late Sunday, early Monday. So let's cross our fingers and hope. We put in a large request this week, and we'll hear Sunday and Monday if we get what we wanted.
Okay. And then Dr. Bolson, before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to ask of either Dr. Bishai or Ms. Alston?
Sorry, I didn't unmute quickly enough here. Hang on just a moment. It's not cooperating. I didn't have specific questions. I wanted to just thank them for the partnership. It's been good to get to know. There we are. It's been good to get to know Dr. Bishai. I mean, he's brought a lot to our conversations. And just know that we've offered any support we can with the vaccines. But, we also appreciate them reaching out to us when they learned they had additional doses this weekend. So we were able to get some of our first educators vaccinated. So we, everything we can do to speed that process up, we are committed to helping with that.
Thank you. Dr. Bishai, Marcy, anything else you'd like to add before I open it up to my colleagues for questions?
Nothing to add.
Council?
Nothing from me.
Anyone, any questions? Council? Mr. Wagner?
Just one comment to Dr. Bishai and to Ms. Alston. I want to just thank you for coming back with such thorough answers to all the questions that I did get to you late last week, and I appreciate you getting them back to me so quickly. I will share them with my fellow council members tomorrow so that they have them too and can look over them, because they do answer a lot of our concerns, and I do appreciate your cooperation on that. Thank you both.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Bishai. Marcy, thank you very much. Dr. Bolson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council will move on. Agenda item number 6, approval of minutes. Public hearing January 5th, 2021. Legislative day 21-001, January 5th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved. Agenda item number 7, introduction and consideration of resolutions. Resolution 028-20, pilot agreement, Windsor Valley 3 apartments. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods.
I move to approve resolution 028-20.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank Thank you, Mr. Johnson. It's moved and seconded to approve Resolution 028-20. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
and Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, Resolution 028-20 is hereby approved. Agenda number 8, call for final reading of bills. Bill 20-034, appropriation fiscal year 2021, other post-employment benefits. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods,
move to approve Bill number 20-034.
may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Beulah. It's moved and seconded to approve Bill 20-034. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, Bill 20-34 is hereby approved. Agenda number 9, enrollment of bills. The enrolled copies of Bill 20-34, appropriation fiscal year 2021, other post-employment benefits, is certified as being the final text passed. Agenda number 10, business from the president. I'm going to be brief today. Among everything else that we were involved with today, we had the great opportunity to meet and speak virtually with our new Hartford Community College president, Dr. Teresa Felder. We had the opportunity to listen to her talk about the grant that they received to help bring a training facility to the Route 40 corridor. I look forward to welcoming her to Hartford County and working with her in the future. And with that, Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. And tonight, I'm going to yield my time simply because I know we have a lot of speakers tonight and I have a lot of things to say. So I'm going to yield my time for until next week so I can speak next week. But thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. To be brief, tomorrow starts the Maryland General Assembly, and our MACA committee, actually, there's so many pre-filed bills, over 900 of them pre-filed, which is unheard of. It's never happened before. Our MACA committee actually started last night, and we'll be continuing monitoring bills. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Mr. Giangiordano.
Thank you, Council President. I want to thank Dr. Bolson, Dr. Bishai, and Marcy for their update. I want to thank my constituents for reaching out to my office about schools and getting the kids back in. And hopefully we get some kind of resolution moving forward that we do not have the ability to get the kids back in school. I wish we did. I understand that the COVID-19 is out there. I definitely am not saying it's not, but I think if you social distance, 25% vaccines for the teachers, that certainly goes a long way in getting them back into school. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Giangiordano. Mr. Schroeds.
Thank you, Council President. Over the weekend, Council President and I attended a Girl Scout Gold Award ceremony for Bridget Trey Montana and Anna Jones. Just want to wish them the very best in their future endeavors. I know they're going to do great things and make a difference in this world. We did have a chance to check out Anna's project at Webster Village Park, and she did a fantastic job. So again, wish them well. Lastly, please pray for my good friend, Brian Indy, who I went to middle and high school with. We've been friends ever since. Great guy. He's fighting metastasized scarnoma. So please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. He has 2 young daughters and a beautiful family. And want to wish him well that he beats this. That's all I have tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schroes. Mr. Wagner.
Given the large number of speakers we have coming in, I'm going to yield my time as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Beulah.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to follow suit with Mr. Wagner, Councilman Wagner. Nothing pressing tonight, and I'll hold my comments to next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beulah. Agenda item number 12, comments and input from attending citizens. Ms. Dixon, do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, Mr. President, we have 38 this evening, I believe, and I believe Ms. Harris is going to go ahead and start making those calls, and they can announce themselves as she connects with them.
Before we get started, again, I'm going to remind everyone this evening, we have 38 speakers. Our time limit is 3 minutes apiece. I will notify you as you get close to the end of your time. And at the end of the 3 minutes, we're going to disconnect the call if you're not finished, unfortunately, so we can move on to the next caller. Please be brief and to the point. And I want to thank you for your patience as we move through this. Ms. Harris, go ahead and call the first caller. Mr. Malama. Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Sir, good evening to you and your colleagues. John P. Malamo, 2402 Eagle View Drive, Bel Air, Maryland. Continuing on, the Harford County Zoning Board of Appeals hearing examiner found that the project presented met all of the requirements of the code and recommended conditions to the special exception of zoning case 5814. The Zoning Board of Appeals, after reviewing the transcript and hearing final arguments, voted to ratify and adopt as its own the recommended decisions of the hearing examiner. Councilman Woods voted affirmatively on that issue. Circuit Court for Harford County reviewed the recommended decision of the hearing examiner and ruled to uphold that decision. My questions to you are, when do you suppose that any of them decided that the code and its conditions of the special exception could be ignored? Do any of you believe that they intended to ignore the code and conditions of the special exception? I can find nothing that indicates that any of them considered allowing the Harford County Airport to operate contrary to those decisions. When did you decide that the code and the conditions of the special exception could be ignored? When did the Glassman administration acquire the authority to change the code and conditions of the special exception granted in zoning case 5814? How much longer will you ignore this situation? When does incompetence become corruption? Who do you represent? Finally, returning to Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan in Kelly versus United States, number 18-1059, I'm paraphrasing. Not every corrupt act by state or local officials is a federal crime. I would submit that while those actions or lack of actions may not rise to the level of federal crime, those actions or lack of actions are not any less corrupt or any less offensive or more acceptable, likewise for their state and local officials involved. This has been all about government and governance in Harford County. Gentlemen, this has been about you. It is now your time to speak. I'll be waiting for your answers. Take the time you need to find the answers. Good night.
Good night, sir. Second caller will be Shelley Holdway.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Shelley Holdaway. I live at 315 Cannery Court, Forest Hill. I have 3 kids in Harford County schools, a kindergartner at Forest Elementary and 2 middle schoolers at Bel Air. They're all thriving because of their teachers and the administrators of these amazing schools and the fact that I'm home with them all day. We can also afford to pay for them to socialize in the many privately owned organizations who are the real heroes during this COVID pandemic. Like many other parents in this county, I am guilty of not doing anything up until now because I figured it really wouldn't make a difference. This week at our elementary school, we sent out a PTA survey mirroring the questions asked in Harford County's focus group. As of today, we had 73 responses representing about 100 of our 476 students. And for the record, 75% of these families are in favor of a return to a hybrid learning. I'd like to share a few voices of them tonight. The families have said, my child now has anxiety going out in public. The 2 days he went to school made a big difference. Or the family who said, my children are failing and depressed. This has been detrimental to my own professional work. Or the woman who said, for 2 kindergartners experience sadness because they want to actually be in school, not on the computer. Kindergartners shouldn't ever show signs of depression, but at times I worry about this. Or the family that said their child has constant anxiety, vomits daily, has trouble keeping on task, and feels disassociated from his teachers and classmates. He was a child who loved school and his teachers and now cries at the mere mention of it. Don't get me wrong, the results of this survey are not all heartbreaking. Many families are thriving, but for the many who are not, you have to hear them, and I encourage other PTAs to send out their own surveys and check in on their families. We are here to speak for them as one voice, and they must be heard. I'm not advocating for a full-blown reopening or putting anyone at risk, and I think our teachers need to be considered in the fact that they're going to have to do triple the work if we were to reopen. But what I am advocating for is choice for our families that are barely hanging on, and choice for the teachers who are desperate to do their jobs like every other frontline worker. After last night's Board of Ed meeting where I shared much of this testimony, I looked into our county's mental health statistics, and I found a startling one. In 2018, almost 20% of high schoolers reported they had seriously considered attempting suicide. I wonder what that statistic would be today. I ask you to consider new data that might be shaping for our secondary and our primary schools related to mental health. The risk associated with this virus is worth taking over the damage that virtual learning is doing to their mental health. It is your duty to do what is best for this community. So many others across the country and even in the state are making in-person learning possible with common sense metrics, even Cecil County. Governor Hogan has given guidance on in-person learning that our schools could be following. We need a new plan and one that includes numbers from our teachers and staff who want to be vaccinated and a timeline to open our schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Lindsay Valentine. Becky Malloy.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, good evening. My name is Becky Malloy. Address is 1723 Beach Bank Way.
Continue, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Becky Malloy, and I'm a parent of a sophomore at C. Milton Wright High School. I am here to advocate for a solid reopening plan for our schools. I can't believe as we sit here this evening that our schools have been shut down for almost 10 months. I'm deeply concerned for the mental health and the devastating loss of learning for the youth of our county. Virtual learning was a viable option back in March, but we now know more about COVID, enough that we can get our children back in school safely. This virus that has a 98% survival rate isn't going anywhere. 100% virtual learning is not the answer. Students are missing out on social, academic, and extracurricular experiences that cannot be replicated through a screen. According to a study of almost 10 million people in Wuhan, China, found that asymptomatic spread of COVID-19 did not occur at all, thus undermining the need for lockdowns, which are built on the premise of the virus being spread by infectious asymptomatic people. Could this possibly be true in the United States? Maryland is one of 5 states out of 50 that remain all virtual as of January 3rd, 2021. If other states and even private schools within our state and county make it work for their students, so can we. Harford County has a population of 255,441 people. Since March, we have had 9,444 cases of COVID and 175 deaths. That equates to a 4% case rate and a 0.00068 death rate. Are we looking at a positivity rate for all Harford County citizens? What percentage of those are senior citizens? At the very least, my suggestion is to poll teachers and then poll parents and ask who is comfortable teaching and learning live and in person and who is more comfortable in a virtual setting, and match accordingly. One caveat that I would like to advocate staunchly against is having our teachers do both. It is unreasonable and outrageous to ask our teachers to manage instruction both virtually and in person, but we do need a choice. If kids are masked and masks really work, why can't the 3-foot rule be accommodated? We must look at the metrics and the science that we are following and couple that with simple common sense. In conclusion, as part of an HCPS parent focus group, I was asked last week, what could our county do to keep our students from falling behind academically? The answer is the county can open the schools as soon as possible. Our students deserve a solid plan, and they deserve it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Jason Barakis.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. Jason Barocas, 140 Loretta Way, Forest Hill, Maryland.
Did you say Barokas?
Yes, I did, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Continue, sir.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jason Barocas. I live in Forest Hill. I have a 3rd grader at Forest Hill Elementary School and a 7th grader at Bel Air Middle School. Before I provide my comments, I just want to state up front that my family and I recognize that the tough decisions the County Council and the Board of Education will have to make as it pertains to reopening our schools. The last 9 months have been challenging for everybody in our county. While everybody would agree that the best thing for our community is to have our teachers and children back in school, the question is whether we can do so safely. So please know that we understand in our family that whatever decision you make, while it's not likely to please everyone, we hope at the end of the day it is motivated by what you deem best to be in our community's best interest. So thank you up front. That said, our family is fully supportive of reopening our schools and would recommend the hybrid approach adopted earlier this academic year in order to ensure that those within our community with health concerns have the option to keep their children home. While virtual learning has been better than we expected, meaning the teachers have remained enthusiastic and patient with our children, the special educators and paraprofessionals that have done an amazing job in supplementing those teachers, and the network continues to reliably function, something that we weren't positive would even happen. It goes without saying that the in-person structured experience of classroom learning is always better. For us as parents, watching our children sit in front of a laptop day in and day out without peer-to-peer social interaction becomes more difficult each week, as we know that long-term, the benefits of virtual learning, i.e. reduced COVID transmission, is being outweighed by the detrimental impact to them, both academically, socially, and mentally. The impact is more so for those students in special education, of which one of our children receives those benefits. Furthermore, we believe that many of our teachers are eager to return to school since they know hybrid learning worked well and was presumably proven to be safer, since the decision to close the schools, at least our understanding, was not based on the school transmission rate, but the county's instead. So therefore, we as a family are willing to follow the science here, assume the risk, and send our children back to school. Is this the right approach for every family? The answer to that is no, and we respect those families' choices, but every family should nevertheless be afforded a choice. And by keeping the schools virtual, you're denying us that opportunity. So in sum, as I stated when I opened, we understand this situation is not ideal, and I do not envy the council's position or the board's position. Leadership is hard, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. So please know that whatever decision you elect to make on this issue, so long as you've considered everybody's viewpoint in this meeting, we will certainly respect it. So thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best in making the decisions for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those comments. Nicole Hayes.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, this is Nicole Hayes. I live at 1316 Marquis Court, Alston, Maryland.
Continue, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to thank you all. I know you have a lot of speakers coming in, and I thank you for staying late tonight. I really think it shows how committed Dr. Bolson is to Harford County and his constituents, since he is still present on the call right now. Oh, wait, I just looked on the screen, and he actually dropped, which is pretty typical of what we're dealing with in Harford County and is a pretty telling way to show you what we're all dealing with on a daily basis. I'm a full-time working mom of three children at Youth Benefit Elementary School. I have a fourth grader, a second grader, and the hardest hit kindergarten. I had an entire speech planned tonight, but scratched it to address what just happened over the past 1.5 hours. I hope you saw firsthand what the parents deal with constantly. The plan is a scapegoat. It was done in August of 2020 and has not been revised since. Our BOE's plan is the easy way out, is an excuse to not return to in-person. There is no creativity. There's no work being created into a plan based on vaccines. You are forcing public school parents who grew up in Harford County and believe in the public school system to go private because they are only presenting us with a 1 day a week return plan. Schools around the country and our neighboring counties and even family in Pennsylvania are full-time since September. This is unacceptable. The continuity plan of learning that was put forth in August of 2020 needs to be scratched and restarted. That 5% number that was developed over a few days in a hurry with limited data is not and should not be an indicator of our children going back to school. This can be shown by the thousands of private schools nationally, along with many other states and school districts across this country, safely going back to school, and they have not missed a beat. My little kindergartner daughter cries every morning as I take her into daycare to learn over a computer screen. Yes, I take her to daycare. My husband and I dish out more money than our mortgage because we work full-time to pay for this daycare. They have been there since May of 2020. 15 children in a classroom. I'm sorry, this is not an issue of COVID. This is an issue of a teachers union having a bigger voice than the students, parents, and constituents that support the school system. We are begging you, this team, to hold the BOE more accountable. They need to step up, do the right thing, be bold, and push forward. Please, we are begging you to get our kids back in school. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Gina Schlosser.
Begging you to get our kids back in school.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Vincenti. Can I have your name and address for the record, please?
Gina Slosser.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
Hello,
I'll
thank
need
you,
your-
everybody.
need your address, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, 1618 Kirsten Court.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm just calling as a parent of a kindergarten and a first grader, and I really am encouraging the schools to open. The BOE has failed us. They don't have a plan. Other states and Maryland counties are either in school or have a plan, a hybrid plan. 1 day a week is not a plan. And just going after what Nicole just said, we need a plan. It does not make any sense. You talk about the vaccine, but what is the plan? My children are in daycare. They've been in daycare since May 2020, learning virtually. If this can happen, then why can't our children go to school? I have been a Harford County resident my entire life, and I wanted to live here so my kids could have a great education. And you are forcing many, many families to go private, and this is just not fair. And I'm sure you're going to lose some educators in this process as well. So that is all I have to say. I just wanted to thank you for offering this time and taking the time to listen to how we feel as parents, because it is important. This is our future, our children. They need to be in school. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Allison Mackley? Next caller, please. Mary Beth O'Brien.
Hello?
Good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. Hi, my name is Mary Beth O'Brien, and I live at 302 Esther Drive in Forest Hill. I have a fifth grader at Forest Hill Elementary School and a sixth grader at Bel Air Middle School. I am calling in tonight to share our experience with virtual learning in Harford County. For our family, both my husband and I are essential employees and work full-time outside the home. One of the biggest challenges for us is the fact that our children are easily distracted. And because we cannot be with them throughout the day, they are usually doing something else when they should be paying attention to school. It is difficult for them to stay engaged and pay attention while sitting in front of a computer taking instruction all day. Before this last shutdown, our children were fortunate enough to be able to attend the learning centers at Forest Hill and Bel Air Middle. I just want to say the learning centers were fantastic. Since the return to all virtual, both of their grades have greatly suffered. My fifth grader a little more than my sixth grader. I know that they are not alone as children suffering academically from the shutdown, as reflected in the first quarter performance review report that was shared at a recent Board of Education meeting. Grades are not the only way in which they are suffering. They sit in their bedrooms all day long doing virtual instruction, completely isolated. They are left to fend for themselves because my husband and I are not able to work from home and help them navigate their classes. They are young and still need the guidance and support that comes from in-person learning as well as the interaction with their peers. I am saddened every day when I come home from work and see their eyes with dark circles. They look tired and run down. While our family is in full support of a return to school full-time 5 days a week, we believe that the parents of Harford County should have the choice to send their child every day, select a hybrid schedule, or continue with all virtual. We know that a full return isn't for everyone, and with 3 options, I am confident that the schools could handle the number of children that wish to return in person. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective.
Thank you, ma'am. Amy Teeter?
Hello?
Good evening. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Amy Teeter.
I'm sorry.
Address is fourth.
Go ahead.
You there?
Yes, go ahead.
Amy Teeter. Address is 4007 Grandview Drive, Hyattsville, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
What other information did you need from me again?
That's it. Just your name and address. Go ahead with your
Okay.
comments, ma'am.
Go ahead with my statement.
Yes, ma'am.
I had wanted to express my concerns for all students regarding going back to school and being able to have in-person learning, questions about parents just being offered choices. As many would also stay home, I think many would return. My son is a kindergartner and is diagnosed with ADHD and struggles with virtual learning. And he was not able to get an assessment done for an OT assessment because he was being homeschooled due to virtual learning not being appropriate. Even with the 504 plan, so we've had to go back now and reassess or re-meet to get new assessments, which won't be due until April. So almost an entire kindergarten year has gone by without his getting help for some of his needs. And I'm just concerned. I know it's a difficult time for everyone, teachers, staff, the board, etc. Just wondering where we're going.
Thank you, ma'am. Are you finished?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Brian Benish.
Hello? Oh,
Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
yes, Brian Benish, 201 Regent Drive, Bel Air, Maryland.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Continue.
County Council members, thank you for letting me speak. I ask that you stand with me in urging Dr. Bolson to be a stronger advocate for our children's education by reopening schools. I listened to Dr. Bolson's message about school opening last night and this evening and was deeply concerned by his statements and response to numerous community requests to reopen schools. Despite many evidence-based testimonies and cogent reasonings offered by community members, Dr. Bolson and the majority of the board circumvented those entirely by simply claiming blind allegiance to the state guidance and its metrics. That's what the guidance says, was their mantra. We must recognize that the state guidance is just that, guidance, and not a legal mandate or law, no matter how strongly worded the guidance. If important decisions about our county's school system are purely issued from state guidance, then why do we have local board of education? Is it not the very responsibility of our county board and superintendent to make decisions for our local community? Yes, the health department and state can provide guidance to be considered, but in the end, it is up to our board of education and superintendent to make decisions about what is best for our children's education. Even if Dr. Bolson's decision is in line with the state guidance, then we deserve to know his reasons. And he must avoid a tautology. He cannot say, because the guidance says so, and it is right because it is the guidance. No, Dr. Bolson must break the circular reasoning by doing the hard work of assessing the reasons behind the guidance and determining whether or not they suit our local community. Then he must communicate those reasons to the community. He and the board have yet to do so. For example, last night, Dr. Bolson highlighted Carroll County's decision to reopen schools. He said that Carroll's decision was made against the state and local health department guidance, and therefore he expects that it will, quote, not go well for them. But why does he think that it will not go well for them or by us if we follow suit? See, in order to answer that question, Dr. Bolson must do more than simply assert that, well, it goes against the guidance. He must do his own critical thinking, examining the data, and thinking through the consequences. I was also disheartened to hear Dr. Bolson dismiss the task of assessing reasons and evidence because, quote, there is science on both sides. All science is not created equal. Dr. Bolson's job is to examine the science, the evidence, the reasons, and then make a decision that's best for our kids based on the science that's available, not a non-decision in spite of the availability of science. The majority of our community is asking Dr. Bolson and the board to be advocates for us and our children by reopening schools, given the risk because of the greater benefit it provides for our children. Yes, this is a majority of opinion, and I was disappointed to hear Ms. Karwacki at last night's board meeting refer to people like myself and others in favor of opening schools as, quote, loud, but the minority. She is incorrect. Not only do the recent PTA survey results betray her, but Dr. Bolson himself admitted as much when he told us that it would be difficult to reopen schools because so many parents have said yes to sending their kids back to school. My modest plea at this point is that Dr. Bolson and the Board of Education do more than give us trite reasons that's what the guidance says. So many concerned parents offered thoughtful reasons for opening
Please bring your
schools.
comments to a close.
Yes, sir. And Dr. Bolson sidestepped all those comments by simply appealing to the state guidance. Please convince Dr. Bolson and the board to grapple with the reasons that we bring forth to reopen schools, engage with the community in discussion about those reasons, and make decisions best for our children's education. Thank you.
Josh Kozel.
Hello?
Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, sir. This is Josh Kozel, 1106 Emerald Drive, Bel Air, Maryland.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And thank you, Council. Thank you for having Dr. Bolson on tonight. I wish he was here to still listen to this meeting. And to start off, I wanted to thank you guys for asking meaningful questions and good questions for the most part tonight. And also thank everyone in the community for calling in and having this discussion. I want to start by stating that it was clearly stated tonight that we can still be in a limited in-person environment, even in our current conditions. And I thought about reading my speech from last night since I was not able to give it to the BOE because of a confirmed Microsoft issue. But I sent that email to the BOE, and I hope that they can have some conversation with me. Just so you guys know, it included the pictures that I shared with you last week. As far as Dr. Bolson, since you're not in our community and have embraced how amazing the history of Harford County is, it's hard to understand why you hear the passion for liberty. People are leaving the system, the county, and these are great people. It is a sad time in Harford County, but it does not have to continue. As a system and a superintendent, you have failed our children, parents, and teachers, even further than we ever thought before. I say this not to be disrespectful, but say it because the lack of leadership and determination to do what is right is not present in your leadership ability. You praise yourself for and the system for leading the charge into virtual platform, but are now falling further behind while others are surpassing us open. Where there is a will, there is a way. You will not make everyone happy, but why are we even discussing feelings? Because our children need the tool that you are responsible for, and that is an in-person education with their teachers, faculty, and most importantly, their peers. Again, as stated, it can even be in a limited fashion, even today. If you look at all the data, it shows the kids and teachers can be in school safely. Stop with the politics. Stop having the backdoor meetings as the board discussed last night. What is the plan? Why hasn't it been advanced? Why was last week the first time your team met with parents to discuss anything about reopening? Why did you force the state to provide guidelines when we as a county had the liberty to decide what is best for our community over the summer? Not to harp on the past, but we should not even be in this position today. Your confidence about the hybrid model over the summer should not have stopped. You should have listened to yourself and not the HCEA influencers. One thing I have learned is it is never too late to do the right thing, but you have to start by making a commitment, a plan, and being a leader to see everything through. It is a shame that you have been given an additional $7.1 million of our taxpaying money, and you have barely impacted our children with them. You have not made any advancements to getting our kids in
Please bring your
school.
comments to a close, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. To the community, please get more involved and understand what it is happening to this great county. Be aware.
sir.
Again,
Rachel Kozel.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. Council President Vincenti, may I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Rachel Kozel. I live at 1106 Emerald Drive, Bel Air, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
I have lived in Harford County my entire life. My family has been in this county for generations. We have been proud members of this community and what it stands for. That is no longer the case. The BOE has been elected to represent the people of this county, and yet they are not doing so. The mental health of our children is in dire need of attention. Our children are suffering. I have a first grader, 6 years old, and a preschooler, 4 years old. My youngest attends preschool, wearing a mask, and has not had any COVID incidents. My 6-year-old sees her younger sister going to school. This is hard for her. She speaks of having to stare at her computer all day. The morning of last Monday, she was physically ill from the thought, gagging and dry heaving in the bathroom before school. She has a go-with-the-flow personality, and this is way out of the norm. She doesn't understand why she is feeling the way she is. Her feelings aren't wrong. This is not sustainable. She also doesn't feel inspired for school on a computer, but she says she is trying really hard and trying to do extra reading and activities to help herself learn. Other comments from her eyes hurt, so we're trying her blue glasses again. She doesn't know any of her friends in class or even her teacher like she did in kindergarten. She misses all the fun extra activities at school, the assemblies, and laughter and giggles with her friends. Most importantly, she is devastated that her sister goes to preschool and she can't. She has stated that she does everything asked to be able to go, but can't understand why she's not allowed. Beyond my children, other children are in serious danger. Teachers and school administrators are children's first line of defense in child abuse cases. They are stuck on a computer, if that's even possible, and observations such as this cannot be made in a virtual environment. The BOE speaks to equity, but where are they landed regarding this urgent issue? Private schools and daycares are thriving. Schools out of state are in person. Why are we not? What is the plan to reopen our schools? Other counties in our state are laying out plans to reopen, at least in a hybrid model. It is imperative to the mental well-being of our children to do so. We cannot continue the way things are. I implore the BOE to come up with a plan for our children and open the schools immediately. The BOE continues to follow the state guidelines
Ms. Kozel,
without a
please bring
second
your
thought.
comments to a close.
Dr. Bolson and the board are hired by citizens at the county level, not the state. Their duties are to be in line with our county, Harford County. I am imploring the county council to fight for our citizens, our children. Thank you.
Hello?
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Stella Peters, 3713 Federal Lane, Abingdon, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. I don't have a speech prepared tonight. I've been listening to some of the parents, and it really breaks my heart to see what's going on in our county, especially with Mr. Bolson, who doesn't seem to have a heart for the needs of our children. Teachers have a voice, but our students don't have a voice. And so I'd like to address a couple of things that have been of concern to me tonight, and actually from last week as well. And I'll start with Mr. Johnson. Last week, Mr. Johnson, you mentioned COVID fatigue. You had mentioned that your family had contracted COVID during a family gathering over the holidays. So I kind of wanted to see what COVID fatigue was exactly. And I found an article in the Psychology Today, which mentioned that COVID fatigue is a complex of emotions, which includes sadness and boredom and loneliness, anxiety, fear,
anger, frustration, and resentment. All of these emotions I feel are what some of the parents today are feeling. These emotions are all brought on by the loss of activity and social relationships produced by pandemic restrictions. It's sad to see that these children no longer have relationships with their students or their teachers, and they continue to suffer and not go to school. The other issue that I heard last week was mentioning rules, that we don't abide by the rules. If we did abide by the rules, that everything would go smoothly and COVID would disappear and everybody could live happily ever after. And I thought, we are following the rules. We're wearing masks, we're social distancing. We have to. We can't go anywhere. We can't go shopping. We can't go to restaurants. We can't even go to church without following the rules. So it made me feel like this was a very irresponsible thing to say, that we're not following the rules. Like we don't care. We do care. We care about our families. We care about our children, but we also care about their mental health. Mr. Bolson mentioned tonight that there's a lot of programs out there for our students that have or are suffering from mental health. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be a lot better to prevent mental health instead of trying to put a Band-Aid on it? It just seems that Mr. Bolson doesn't have the heart to take care of these students, to put them first. Also, sports. Sports stopped this week or last week. I don't know exactly when, but they stopped. But club sports are still going on, and they have been going on for quite some time. So yes, there is enough science to support evidence on every site. I just want you to make sure that everyone is accountable.
Thank you,
and that we're looking at the needs of our families.
Kim Novak.
Hello?
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Kim Novak at 4115 St. Clair Bridge Road in Garrettsville.
Thank you.
Tonight, I wanted to speak to Dr. Bolson, who I don't think he's on the meeting anymore, but I'll say it anyway. We're concerned with the health and well-being of our students. So many stores and restaurants are open, but why are not schools? Why? Last night, you asked the board for a robust discussion. Dr. Bauer's only addition, the question as to whether or not the protesters wore masks, doesn't help your board make any decisions. And to parents, it's the perfect example of the perceived attitude you are collectively taking towards the decision-making process. Keep in mind, we don't want it to be an us versus them mentality, but more dialogue between the school and the parents needs to be taking place. Another board member mentioned that reopening should be discussed at each meeting. Why hasn't it been? Hogan and Salomon have given the green light for each district to reopen and are encouraging them to do so. I actually spoke with the Maryland Department of Education today and confirmed that you do have the power to open, yet you say the metrics are imposed by them. Your own testimony here tonight about Carroll County, who made the decision to reopen, shows they have the power to do so, and so do you. Also, the health department doesn't approve or deny an opening. They merely give us guidance, not enforce law. The requirement of a 5% positivity rate or lower is not what you should base a reopening on. Other school systems in nearby states are open and have a higher positivity rate than us. The true metrics we should be following is the death rate. Hartford had a total of 175 deaths. 64 of those occurred in assisted living facilities. Overall, 85% of those who died were over 65. The risk of death is low, and the survival rate is 99%. Only 4% of your teachers are over the age of 65. The fear that children spread the virus is merely fear alone. We have not had a single child die of COVID in Hartford, but we had 2 students commit suicide because of closures. The numbers you need to consider are the death rate. Last night, you said you're following guidelines from the August 22nd guide, but the newest version is actually January 7th. Why are you using outdated guidelines? You have 61 principals that know their buildings. Have you not had them assess their classrooms to make accommodations to get their children back in class in keeping with a 3-foot guideline? Has the use of gymnasiums, which are in every school, been considered to accommodate more students? Have you reached out to other schools in other states to see what their success rate is? Why have parents not been surveyed again to see what they want, since your job is to serve the needs of their
Ms. Novak,
children?
please bring your
The
comments to a
survey
close.
should gauge how much accommodations you would need to make. But parents need choice. Some people are afraid they don't want to go back, but yet they should have the option to continue online learning while others go back in person. The debate's
Thank
gone
you,
on
ma'am.
far too long about staying open.
Melissa Hahn?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record?
Hi, yes, my name is Melissa Hahn. My address is 211 Pilesville Road, Pilesville, Maryland, 21132.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
Hi, members of the County Council. Thank you for hearing us. And Superintendent Bolson. Oh, yeah, wait, he hung up because that shows you how much he really cares. I'm writing as a parent concerned with the mental health of my children and so many other children in our county, as witnessed by the 140 plus parents and students that attended our rally last evening, as well as 200 plus luminaries representing the many children that could not attend. I have witnessed my children, both an 11th grader and an 8th grader, struggling every single day on this virtual platform. They are not learning. They are struggling to stay afloat in a sinking ship, waking every day to the same frustration, anxiety, feeling of defeat, and failure and isolation. My relationship with my children has never been worse. Every day, I get up, make breakfast, and cheer them on for their day ahead, let them know if they need anything, I am here. The problem is, the very mention of school is a subject these days that provokes feelings of anger, frustration, and reminds them of the things that they're so desperately missing in their lives. Riding the bus in the morning every day, chatting with their friends, and exchanging stories of the sports and the fun things that they did over the weekend or the night before. Walking down the hallways, saying hi to their friends and stopping to chat for a minute in between classes. Eating lunch with friends and making plans for after-school sports and activities. Interacting with classmates and teachers and learning. I never thought I would see the day when kids want to be in school. Not only do our children want to be in school, they need to be in school. They need social interaction. They need to be able to play high school sports, to be a part of a team, to learn it's okay to lose as long as you do your best. And when they win, celebrating on the bus with the team on the way back to your home school, working so hard every day at practice to be the best they can be. They need the coaches cheering them on. They need the teachers saying, great job. They need the pride of walking down the hallway in their jerseys and the camaraderie that goes along with being part of a team. They need parents in the stands being their number one fans cheering them on. These very things that make our kids who they are have been stripped away and continue to be stripped away daily. At first, it was understandable. Now, it's unjustifiable and cruel. Being in school, yes, is about an education, most importantly, and my children are failing. They are struggling every day with missing assignments, mounting, and the quarter coming to a close, yet another failing grade. No matter how much I encourage, tell them this is temporary and that they can do it, it's not enough. It's not school. It's not teaching. It's not learning. Being in the school is so important. Please, please do what other counties are doing. Do what is right for the children in this community. Give those that want our kids back in school the option before our children's
Please bring your
self-esteem.
comments to a close.
I'm almost done. Before our children's self-esteem and growth as individuals has irreversible consequences. Every day that goes on is causing more and more damage than you know. Do what we elected you to do and represent the needs of the children and citizens
ma'am.
in your districts.
Jill Ferrara?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Jill Ferrara, 2000 Garden Drive, Forest Hill, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, council members. I have been testifying at these meetings since October, and quite frankly, I'm exhausted. But you know what? I will never give up. How could I look at my children and potential grandchildren and say, I gave up to fight for their future? We have been hit in the gut and the wind knocked out of us. As we are trying to catch our breath, a left hook is thrown, then a right cross, and while we're trying to find our bearings, all we can do is try everything we can to protect ourselves from the uppercut and knockout punch. We are bruised and bloody, but we still find the will to survive. Even the strongest man alive can only endure so much weight on his shoulders, but how much weight can he bear before it crushes him? It has been 10 long, agonizing months. Honestly, how much more can you ask us to take? Families, children, businesses are suffering. People are scared they're going to lose everything, but you continuously ask us to keep waiting. We still have no answers from our local leaders, but you expect us to blindly trust you. How? When you haven't given us much to have faith in. Every night I go to bed praying for my son, his mental health, education, and overall well-being. That's all I want for him, and that's all any parent wants for their children. Our kids are really struggling, and just like us, they have been hit from all directions. What this county is doing to them isn't fair. They don't deserve to be demonized like they have. So tonight, I am graciously asking you to please stop treating them like this and do something to open our schools so our children have the bright future they rightfully deserve. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, ma'am. David Farrell?
Hello.
Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
David Ferrara, 2000 Garden. Good evening, Council President and Council members. I want to tell you that that this will be the last time that I would call, but I feel as though I'll probably be calling in again. But I say this because I really refuse to continue wasting my time and breath trying to educate you and prompt you to do your own research. I know that you have the ability, staff, and access to all you need, which is more than I have. Yet it has taken almost a year for you all to just put together some valid questions. You all obviously do not confer between yourselves. Why would I think you would venture outside the council? If you had a shred of care about all the people in this county, you would have pursued all angles concerning this so-called pandemic. I have personally witnessed your hypocrisy, as well as either lies or deliberate contradicting information. I have seen it on the COVID websites, both locally, federally, as well as globally. You or someone is deliberately hiding valid information like suicides, attempted suicides, car accidents, accidental poisonings, and so on, all being marked as COVID deaths. There's only but one or two reasons to do that. One, you were told to, or two, you continue pushing a planned narrative. If you were told to, then you should have the courage to stand up to that and push back. We have seen many Americans do just that, but without the support of other brave leaders, they were squashed by the big tech and those who have something to gain by keeping this going. I ask you to be brave and fearless as our founding fathers were. Most refer to this as combating this virus, albeit one with 99% survival rate. I can tell you that in a combat situation, if an individual showed and expressed fear, as most are, I would not be in the same bunker as them because fear is crippling and will get you and your comrades killed. We have been let down by law enforcement all the way to the highest level. As well, we have been let down by our elected officials, healthcare workers, Board of Education, and teachers. I now know that the suppression of information and censorship has been and continues to be perpetrated. I leave you with one example. The flu all but disappeared when COVID arrived. Look it up for yourself. And we were just informed last week that it had completely stopped here in Hartford County for the month of December. Although I do know of two people who did test positive in the month of December, so contradicts that. No one but the citizens found that odd.
Please bring your
Good
comments
night
to a close.
and good luck.
Allison Hernandez.
You have reached the voicemail of Dr. Allison Hernandez, licensed psychologist.
Karen Schandelmeyer.
Hello?
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Karen Schandelmeyer, and I live at 1302 Cheshire Lane in Bel Air, Maryland.
Thank you. I thought I butchered your last name there for a minute.
You're good.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna keep this short because I know you guys have had a long night. Good evening, members of our county council. I want to thank you for asking our health department and Superintendent Bolton questions on behalf of your constituents with regard to getting our children back in school. I have two students in the Harford County Public School System. One is a freshman at C. Milton Wright, and the other is a sixth grader at Southampton Middle. Neither of them had the opportunity to step inside their new schools this year. We are coming upon 10 months of virtual learning in this county, and it's not working for many families. I wanted you to know that at the December 21st, 2020 board of education meeting, it was reported that 41.1% of Harford County freshmen had at least one failing grade in Q1, the easiest quarter of the school year. I hope that you find this as alarming as I do, as I have a freshman who is college bound that is going to be part of this statistic for Q2. She was on the honor roll for the first quarter, but is now failing geometry. After failing the first test of the second quarter, her father and I hired an in-person tutor. On the second test, she got a 25%. She's like me in math. She struggles. It is obvious that virtual school is not working for many kids. She is one of them. This will affect her future as a GPA plays a big role in college acceptance. It has also affected her confidence as a student. She is upset that she was trying her hardest and failing a class. I can tell you this would not be happening if she were in the classroom. There is absolutely no excuse as to why our children couldn't have been back in schools in person on day one of the 2020 to 2021 school year, when the metrics were well in check. I'm tired of the excuses. It is time that Harford County put the kids' best interests first, like Carroll County Public Schools did, and like our private schools have been doing since the beginning of the school year. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Carrie Swift. Brian Reeve.
Hello?
Good evening, sir. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Brian Reed, 1601 South Tollgate Road, Bel Air.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to thank the council for taking time to listen to the public concerns tonight about bringing the kids back to school. I thought you guys asked some great questions of Dr. Bolton. And, I could quote a bunch of stats. A lot of people are giving you guys a lot of stats and the thoughts on all that. And, to me, this decision comes down to more than just statistics. It's about the kids. It's about the feelings. It's about the pain that they're going through. I am the proud father of a 7th grade girl and a 5th grade boy in this county.
they have suffered greatly as a result of being at home and being forced into virtual learning. My daughter has depression issues to begin with. Being home and not being able to interact with her classmates and teachers, her mental health has suffered. We have had to increase the dosage on her medication. And her physical health has suffered as well through lack of activity and lack of availability of recreational sports. Back in December, I made a decision, even though I'm on a limited income, to try to pursue in-person learning for my children. And I found a Christian school in Baltimore County where my daughter is now currently attending. I pulled her out of Southampton Middle and took her down. And they've made accommodations. They made it work, both virtually and for 5-person in-day, five day a week in-person learning. I know that it can happen. If there's a will, there's a way. She's much happier in that environment, and it's just a shame that I had to pull her out of the public schools. Now, my son, who's in 5th grade, is on an IEP, and they were unable to accommodate him because of his reading disability. So he is still currently in Harford County Public Schools, and his IEP is not being met in this virtual environment. He is in constant frustration, and his learning is suffering. It's just caused a lot of suffering for our family. And I just implore you, I know you guys don't necessarily have the decision power on whether the kids return to school. I know that lies with Dr. Bolson and the health department, but I just ask that you continue to influence those folks to try to bring these kids back to school as soon as possible. It's more important than the numbers. They need their mental health. And I just want to thank you guys again for taking your time and listening to the public about this issue. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves, for your comments. Kate Stafford.
Your call has been forwarded. 949.
Emily Leonard.
Reached the voicemail.
Chantel Smith.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Chantel Smith, and I live at 3101 Whitefield Road in Churchville.
Thank you, ma'am.
I would like to address the school reopening and the struggles that my teens and students in Harford County Public Schools are facing due to the lack of in-person education at school. Sorry, I just ran up the stairs, so trying to catch my breath. I am a parent of a senior and a junior at C. Milton Wright High School, and my teens are struggling immensely. I understand the need to be safe and take appropriate precautions to safely open our schools, but our children need to be back in school. Sorry. My family
is immune compromised, so we do take COVID and all illnesses very seriously. But seeing what my teens have gone through in virtual school this year is absolutely heartbreaking and frustrating. My senior is autistic. He has an IEP due to learning disabilities and ADHD, and he struggles with school during the normal school year, but his struggles have magnified immensely with the online format. My senior failed Algebra 2 first quarter and is in danger of not graduating if he fails his math class. He struggles most days with his assignments and has broken down many times and told me he wants to quit high school because he is so frustrated with the format, the confusing setup of numerous platforms used, and the amount of time it takes him to complete assignments. Ryan was able to attend approximately 1 month of school in person, 4 days a week, as C. Milton writes, during mid-October to early November before the schools closed. In those few weeks, his whole attitude and state of mind shifted, and it was the happiest I've seen him since April. After returning to virtual school, he has been depressed, angry, demoralized, and believes that the county and the school officials do not care about their students. Online virtual school does not work for him and so many other students. My junior is an honors and an AP student that currently does not want to return to school because of medical concerns related to a chronic illness. She longs to be back in school, playing in band, seeing her classmates, having the interaction with teachers, and looks forward to the day when she can have a normal school life. She is concerned about the amount of time spent in front of screens and has extreme anxiety over completing required work in time. She also feels as if no one is listening to students or cares about what they are going through. Both of my teens have suffered anxiety, depression, and frustration, and we need to get our students back into school. My nephew, who attends a school in Tulsa County, Oklahoma, has attended school in person since August 2020.
Please bring your comments to a close, ma'am.
Yes. The current COVID rate for Tulsa County is 91 per 100,000 versus Harford County of 41.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please.
Aaron Cummings.
Hello, this is Erin.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, it's Erin Cummings, 711 Clearview Drive, Bel Air.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I, like many others, are here to comment on our children getting back to school. I actually haven't been very involved in the charge until now, and I chose now because our Board of Education continues to do nothing. I had hoped that with all the time that our kids have spent at home, that maybe there was a plan or a better solution coming, but we have yet to see that. I have 2 elementary age children, 1st grade and 4th grade, and they have been resilient and they've adapted to every change along the way, and I'm thankful for that, but it does not change the fact that they need to be in the classroom, working with their teachers and collaborating with their friends. There's nothing else like that. For the last 10 months, our board has refused to come up with a solid plan to keep our kids in school, and to me, this is the problem. They are refusing to do the job they are tasked to do. They have made excuses and continue to blame others. It's the governor, it's the health department. The blame cannot always lie on other people. We see daycares, private schools, restaurants, churches, grocery stores, malls, sports leagues, and many others opening. So why aren't our schools on the list? Why can't we find a way to get them back? It's just unacceptable. We need a plan to get the kids back at least 2 days a week to finish the year. We need answers. We need a new plan. I'm asking the council, the health department, and the Board of Education to be the advocates our kids deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Andrea Deo. Brianna Coleman?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Brianna Coleman, and I live at 2347 Engle Road.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. You may be wondering why the sudden interest in public comments about schools at a county council meeting. It is because parents around the county are frustrated with Dr. Bulson, and tonight he had a seat at your table. I say had because his actions show how much he really cares about what parents have to say by choosing to leave the call knowing that 38 concerned parents were waiting for him to hear our comment. I am well aware the council has no say in the reopening of our schools, but I am hoping that you can and will continue to be an advocate for Harford County parents and students who wish to return to in-person learning, especially when counties around us are returning to hybrid learning plans in the recent weeks. I think it's pretty clear after listening to Dr. Bulson speak tonight, he has no intention of modifying his original plan from August 2020 and moving forward with getting our children back into school buildings. It's a fact children are suffering, especially the early learners, and science has proven with precautions in place, the virus is not spreading in schools. This virus isn't going anywhere, and while teachers may be next in line for vaccine, there is no vaccine for our children. This is the new normal, and we need to move forward. It is time for action. Dr. Bashai said it tonight. Once the 1B category is vaccinated, schools should be able to safely reopen. So let's get those teachers vaccinated, and then there will be no excuses. I am willing to volunteer to help Dr. Bashai and the Harford County Health Department get the 1B group vaccinated as quickly as possible. In return for a mandate from the Harford County Public Schools Board of Education that once teachers are vaccinated, they will fully reopen the schools for those who wish to return to in-person learning. In closing, I call on you tonight to put pressure on the Board of Education and Dr. Bulson to modify their current outdated plan, that once teachers are vaccinated, it's time to get these students back in person learning as soon as possible, but especially for the 2021-22 school year. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Maria Kopp?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Maria Kopp. My address is 416 Tyrell Court, Bel Air, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
I am the parent of two boys that attend Sea Mountain Wright High School in 10th and 11th grade. I am also a registered nurse and I care for the victims of COVID-19. I would also like to say, as many others have, that I am disappointed in Dr. Bulson for logging off and not staying to listen to the comments of the parents of the students that he cares for so much. Virtual learning was intended to be temporary until a plan was implemented to return students back. Virtual learning is not learning. Our teachers and school employees are essential workers. Schools and businesses across this country and the world have adapted and overcome to remain open or reopen safely. Our neighbors in New York, New Jersey, and Delaware with higher metrics have done so. Private schools in this county have remained open. The plan cannot be driven by the metrics as demonstrated by Carroll County and Cecil County, who have both chosen to open. For our high school students, the effects of virtual learning will have a lasting impact on their GPA, their standardized testing scores, and their ability to compete with their peers in other school systems that they have the opportunity to learn in person. For some, the chance for scholarships has already been negated. Sports programs, intramural clubs, music, and theater, they've all been put on hold indefinitely. These are invaluable programs for our youth. They have huge impact on learning and social skills formation.
However, our county allows recreational sports teams to practice and use their county fields. Our frustration as parents comes from the lack of effort put into developing a plan to get the children back in person, as well as the hypocrisy of calling in-person learning unsafe. I understand that in the spring and summer of 2020, we had little to no data to understand this virus, the spread and the impact. However, we do. We have health experts that recommend children be back in school. We also have in-person schools with no accelerated transmission rate. Miami-Dade County, for example, with a 9% positivity rate, has the 4th largest school district in the country. Their positivity rate for schools is 0.6%. A 0% transmission rate is impossible. That's why the CDC has a mitigation toolkit. The plan should be to utilize these tools. As a parent, it's very difficult to see casinos open for business ahead of schools, Disney World open ahead of schools, water parks open ahead of schools. My son works at a restaurant in this county, and he sees staff in the schools eating inside the restaurant, but yet the school's not safe. If Dr. Bolson
Thank you, ma'am.
and the Board of Education.
Sybil McDowell.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, it's Sybil McDowell, 917 Coburg Court, Bel Air.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
So, like a lot of others before me, I had a whole speech planned, and I'm going to kind of walk away from that and just cover what I wanted to, the core of what I wanted to say. So, virtual learning is just not working. It's not an education. It's not a true education. So one of the big things I did recently was ask my children, I have 2 5th graders, twins, in Red Pump Elementary. I wanted to know what they and a couple of our friends' children's thoughts were on virtual learning. I wanted to hear from the kids. And here were some of the quotes I got from the kids. It's very hard to concentrate virtually. Information is not absorbed, and it's just not engaging. We're bored, we're tired during the day because we are staring at a screen all day. And after school, we don't have any energy, and there's nothing to do other than stay home and do more electronics or watch TV because we can't do after school sports or activities. Navigating its learning is time consuming and confusing. Network lagging causes delays and frustrations. Our teacher has to stop often to help other students with tech issues and network issues. It's hard to get teachers' attention because she has so many students that she has to help, and we have to either raise our hand virtually or send an email. We don't get the help right away, and we get distracted and just kind of move on and hope that we've figured it out on our own. Excuse me. We miss being with our friends and our teachers. This isn't fair. We hate virtual learning. Total side point, my kids have done the Patriot program from kindergarten through 4th grade. This year, their attitude has completely changed. They've looked forward to this, all of these years, wanting to go on the field trip, wanting to do their big 5th grade project. And now their attitude, these same children who were very enthusiastic to do this, and both my husband and I volunteered, was, we don't care. What difference does it make? Why should we bother? So this is the sentiment across so many children and family that we know. So many parents, we hear this over and over again. And some of you on the council have said the same things at your children every day. It's frustration, tears, anger, daily basis. It's constant. The stress on the family and the strain on our relationships. We start the day off trying to be cheerleaders and we end up in tears and crying, and there's nothing we can do. Parents are fed up. We're tired of not being heard, and we're feeling helpless. Our kids deserve better. We're being failed by both Dr. Bolson and the Board of Education. I spoke last night as well. Frankly, my speech last night was a lot more groomed and thought out, but tonight I'm just angry and I'm tired of it.
I literally am fighting back tears listening to the other parents. We just want you to be advocates. We know that you can't make the decision. We know that this is not, your final say, but we need advocates. We need our children back in school. This is not fair to them.
Thank you, ma'am.
Detrimental, and it's hurting them.
Thank you. April Damastis?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
It's the councilman. I turned it off. April Damascus,
Need your address, ma'am.
133 Hokeland Drive.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue. You there, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Continue.
Yes. Nothing. I'm sorry, my son, he's wondering what's going on. The big issue with the school system right now, the kids need to be back in school. Their mental health is being greatly affected. Both of our children have had some pretty serious meltdowns mentally. They both want to be back in school. The science is not there as far as keeping them out of school. They're all failing, and that's just my biggest issue going on right now, is trying to get the kids back in school.
Appreciate your comments, ma'am. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Samantha Foster? No, we'll call back.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, Samantha Foster, 301 Victory Gallup Court.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
Hi, my name is Samantha Foster. I have 4 children in the Havre de Grace school system. Well, actually 2, and 2 are in the infants and toddlers, which have completely failed my children. We've been asked all along to follow the science, but as recently as just 2 days ago, the CDC announced the death rate for COVID infection for children ages 0 to 19 are statistically 0. Children are not dying of this virus. Many medical professionals, scientists, doctors, and infectious disease specialists have argued against closures and lockdowns being the correct course to fight this pandemic. In fact, many state schools have remained open, and they continue to be safe for both the children and teachers. Children are not bringing this virus home and passing it to the parents or grandparents. Children are not infecting teachers. If all the science supports this, then why are we closing? Why aren't you guys fighting for us? We need advocates on our side. We know Bolson is not doing his job. We also know that Bolson children are very fortunate enough to not have to go through the mental state that our children are going through due to the nice private schools that his children go to. And we know that they don't even reside in Harford County. We shouldn't have to call a crisis center for mental health problems. If our schools were open, we wouldn't have these problems. But Bolson wouldn't know because of his children being in private schools. Other counties have almost double the COVID rate, and they are opening this week. Salomon wants us to open, but no one wants to hear that. Everyone is listening to Bolson. Why? Why is anyone listening to Bolson? Is this all over a big political scam that Christy Smith, our president of our union, is bullying the BOE and putting politics over our children's well-being? You guys really need to look into that. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you, ma'am. Lily Foster?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. Can I have your name and address for the record, please?
It's supposed to be Lily Foster, but Lily Foster is too upset that Bolson, she's a third grader.
Ma'am, your time has been used. I'm sorry, I can't have you speak for her.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that my daughter is very upset that Bolson is not listening to her. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Angela Richards?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Angela Richards. My address is 1900 Atkinson Road, Joplin, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay. 1 second, sorry.
Okay.
I'm about to start. Sorry, I have to get to a quiet place.
Are you there, ma'am?
Okay, yes, I'm starting. Sorry, I have to get to a quiet place.
Go ahead and start, ma'am.
Okay, once again, my name is Angela Richards. Thank you, County Council, for asking all the questions that you guys asked Superintendent Bolson tonight. And once again, I'm calling on behalf of my first grader and my fourth grader. They go to Youth Benefit Elementary School. Unfortunately, virtual learning is not working for them, especially my first grader. It has been a continuous struggle every day. Every day he says he wants to go to real school. He doesn't understand why he can't. He doesn't have the maturity level or attention span to learn from a laptop every day. Due to the struggles he's having, his teacher has suggested that he get a tutor. So that is what that's what we did. So, in reference to what Superintendent Bolson said about the tutoring being available, I don't think all schools know about that because my school has not told me anything about free tutoring. Besides that, back to what I was saying, my nieces and nephews have been going to school every day. They live in Pennsylvania, and there's no way I can explain it to my first grader why they're going to school every day and he cannot. And the last thing I have to say is that earlier today I saw that it was announced that Baltimore is planning to reopen more schools for elementary students for in-person learning despite the spike in COVID-19 cases this winter. And
really confused that also now they are able to develop a plan, and once again, still Harford County cannot. That's all I had to say tonight, and thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you, ma'am. Tim Mullen?
Hello.
Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Tim Mullen, 4068 Tabernacle Road, Whiteford.
Thank you, sir.
I'm the father. Thank you. Good evening. I'm the father of two North Harford High School students, both of which are on individualized education programs. Both receive accommodations for their learning disabilities. At least they are supposed to. My son has an executive functioning disorder. This disorder comes with trouble paying attention, organization skills, planning, and self-starting. The teachers and staff at North Harford High School have put forth a tremendous effort to help him. But how can someone truly help a student with self-starting and organization skills through a computer screen? Sure, both my children are provided extra time to get assignments turned in and other avenues to improve their grades. But are they really learning? The first day my son returned to virtual learning at home rather than at the learning center, he sent a text to his mom. The text said, "I can't learn this way. I can't focus. I need to be back in school." This from a kid who really isn't that big a fan of school in the first place. So if a 14-year-old can see the need to return to in-school learning, why can't the Board of Education? We live 1 mile away from Pennsylvania's Southeastern School District that has successfully been going to school since August. They put in the work, made a plan, and went back to school and have remained open. Our Harford County students are being left behind while other schools continue to provide in-person learning. We live in rural Harford County. My kids really have no friends in walking distance, so much of their social interaction comes from going to school. Both have become more and more socially isolated as a result of virtual learning and the school closures. Many people mention the unknown long-term effects of COVID-19. I fear what the long-term effects of virtual learning will be due to the lack of social interaction that in-school learning provides. So much gets lost without face-to-face learning. When in class with their students, teachers can see when a student is drifting, doesn't understand something, or is struggling with other personal issues. I am not naive enough to believe that there are no risks in returning to school, but our children face risks all the time. According to Maryland's COVID-19 website, there have been 6 documented COVID-related deaths under the age of 19. For some perspective, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, in 2019, 45 drivers aged 15 to 20 were killed in motor vehicle collisions in Maryland. I took a moment today to read the Board of Education's strategic plan. The vision: we will inspire and prepare each student to achieve success in college and career. My daughter is a junior and wants to go to college. Unfortunately, nothing about e-learning has inspired her or prepared her to achieve success in college. In the strategic plan, the words "providing a safe and secure environment" is mentioned in the mission, the core values, and the long-term goals. As a concerned parent and on behalf of many other parents, I ask Dr. Bolson and the Board of Education to stay on mission, exemplify the core values, and strive for the long-term goals by developing and enacting a plan for the current metrics and create safe and secure learning environments for our students and get them back in school. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you, sir. Laura Satakis?
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Laura Sedekis, and my address is 2541 Shores Landing Road, Darlington, Maryland.
Thank you, ma'am. Continue.
Hi, yes, thank you first for listening to me today. I wanted to talk about how we really need to reopen our schools for our kids, especially up here in an area where we're so underserved with technology. It's not a matter of whether or not we can afford it. We just don't have the infrastructure to help our kids learn. There's a huge disparity, and we really need to get them back into school.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeremy Novak. Yes, did you send that message?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Council President Vincenti, may I have your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. It's Jeremy Novak, 4115 St. Clair Bridge Road.
Thank you, sir. Continue.
I'd like to thank you for having the people on that are responsible for keeping the schools closed this evening. I would just like to say that, like everyone else that's called in earlier, that I understand that you cannot make the schools open, but you can go ahead and be our voices for the people that you represent. These viruses are always going to be around. The vaccines are just going to help it be less severe. We really need to learn to live with them and get back to some kind of normal. I had a whole speech plan tonight, but I'm kind of just going through that quickly. First, I would like to address Dr. Bolson. As a kid, the most important thing that I learned that everyone seems to forget these days is the phrase, actions have consequences. If I were to go into a job and my employer asked me to do my job and I told him, I don't want to do it that way, I'm going to do it my way, I probably wouldn't have a job. The same goes for you. You have tried this virtual learning and it has proven for almost a year now to be completely detrimental to the students. You know, our future generation that will contribute to society, help run our country and our state someday. It is the definition of insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The long and short-term damage, both physically and mentally to the children, is going to be irreversible. Many students have failing grades with virtual learning, and their psychological state is being destroyed for this, when in reality, the system is failing the children. It blows my mind that neighboring states, such as Pennsylvania, have the option of being in person or virtual, but we can't seem to do that here. These states have higher rates than we do, yet are functioning without widespread outbreaks related to schools being open. Dr. Bolson, I ask that you take a look at what other areas are doing and consider making a change now. Harford County schools keep coming at the bottom of performance and pay in this state. There are great teachers, there are great staff. Please utilize them. I'm sure, being that you are the highest paid county employee, you should be able to come up with a solution to fix this. And if you cannot, please resign. Keep in mind, your actions have consequences. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Allison Hernandez.
Hello?
Good evening, ma'am. This is Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record, please?
Allison Hernandez, 404 Muscovy Court.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead and continue.
Okay, hi, my name is Allison. I am the mother of a 10-year-old girl who attends gymnastics at ACPR Gymnastics. I'm going to give you guys a quick little break from the school discussion tonight. This is going to be about gymnastics. Mr. Glassman issued an order to close all rec facilities in our county on or about November 13th. In doing so, the building, Aberdeen Churchville Rec Center, which ACPR rents from the county, was locked. To my knowledge, all other gymnastics facilities in the county and perhaps in the state remain open. This has imposed unfair discrimination against our girls in closing our facility and not others. As you may or may not know, gymnastics is a unique sport that cannot easily be moved to another building, like, say, soccer can. For example, our bars are drilled into the floor and we have a tremendous amount of equipment. Gymnastics is also unique in that regular conditioning and skills practice are imperative in order to prevent injury. Skills regression happens very quickly within a week or two without regular practice. In order to prepare for our upcoming competition season, we parents are driving our gymnasts to gyms that will allow us to practice at their facilities. Keep in mind, most of the facilities that we are traveling to are in Baltimore County, where COVID rates are higher, and then we are traveling back here to Harford County.
Please realize the strain that this puts on all involved. Let's start with working parents. We are in some cases driving 40 to 45 miles to another facility to practice, then waiting 3+ hours for our gymnast to practice, and then driving another hour home. Add gas, tolls, childcare for other children, and the cost we incur to use another facility, and this becomes very expensive very quickly. Not to mention the mental health of the gymnasts, especially the upper level girls who are used to being in the gym 5 to 6 days per week. Meanwhile, our bars and beams are gathering dust behind locked doors as we travel to other facilities and gather. Now, keep in mind that all other gymnastics organizations in the county remain open. Due to our coaches' strict adherence to the COVID-19 safety precautions, which included social distancing, mask wearing, hand sanitizing, and sanitizing of equipment, we had 0 incidents reported or that were associated with our gym from July 1st until November 13th while we were open in 2020. My daughter wrote a letter to Barry Glassman in December and has yet to hear a response. I myself have written him 2 times without a response back. The bottom line of my purpose to speak today is I am asking for an exception to the closing of the county building to allow the nonprofit ACPR to reopen its facility doors at the Aberdeen Churchville Rec Center in Churchville. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Dixon, do we have anyone else signed up?
There's no one else signed up, Mr. President.
With no one else signed up, then this meeting will be adjourned. Thank you.